Chapter 1442. Qin Mo had just lifted his lids. The little tiger's hand was already pressed on his forehead. Then, she frowned heavily. She stopped wagging her tail and ran downstairs. She carried a small medicine box and ran back. She was probably too naughty. Compared to Qin Mo, the little tiger always had injuries of various sizes on her body. Of course, there weren't any heavy injuries. Usually, it was because she was climbing a wall and got scratched on her face and hands. Sometimes, she would have a toothache and a bloated stomach. These were problems that children often encountered. Little Tiger Bo was so familiar with the Yin family's medicine box because every time she was sick or injured, Qin Mo would be the one feeding her medicine. At first, Qin Mo didn't know what the little tiger was going to do. He felt a little dizzy. He swayed and wanted to stand up to look for her. But when he saw the little tiger carrying the medicine box, his fingers paused. Bo Jiu took the medicine box on the first trip. On the second trip, she carried a big pot of hot water. She lowered her head and poured the cold medicine into Qin Mo's mouth seriously. Then, she broke a few pieces of medicine and looked at Qin Mo with her dark eyes. She wanted him to eat medicine. This was the first time. He was being taken care of. Qin Mo watched as the little tiger ran up and down. In the end, she took a book and flipped a few pages before saying, "Momo, I don't know how to tell bedtime stories. Why don't I make one for you?" MMH? Qin Mo felt that it was rare to see someone not being naughty. She even knew how to tell him a bedtime story. He couldn't help but smile. Seeing this, little Tiger Bo lowered her eyes and kissed him on the cheek. Qin Mo didn't guard himself. He didn't know if it was because of the cold or something else, but the back of his ears turned red. When he thought about it, it was a certain little tiger who began to make up a story. The Bo family was familiar with Buddhism and the Bible. These were two different beliefs. But it wasn't hard to tell from the little tiger's words. Hence, she told him a story. A long time ago, there was a person who cultivated the demonic path and a person who cultivated the righteous path. The person who cultivated the demonic path was treated as an unforgivable sin and fell into the underworld. Those who cultivated the righteous Tao could ascend to the exalted immortal realm and become undying and indestructible. However, no one knew that the two of them actually knew each other, and they were on very good terms. They met when they were 8 years old, under the Kunlun ice mountain, and worshipped the same celestial master. It was just that the one who cultivated the demonic path was naughty and mischievous, and always wanted to cause trouble. All the immortal herbs he obtained were given to the one who cultivated the celestial path. This was because the cultivation of the celestial path required one to expend vital energy, and to comprehend great enlightenment. Only then would one be able to love all living things. Originally, the two of them were equally talented, but one day, the child who cultivated the demonic path committed a great taboo. In order to save his senior martial brother who cultivated the celestial path, he committed the sin of killing and was imprisoned in the Kunlun mountain range for 3 years. At that time, his senior apprentice brother went to accompany him every day in exchange for bringing him immortal herbs. However, he was rejected. That person who cultivated the demonic path had said, "I can't do nothing when I see you in harm's way. I can't love all living beings." It was probably because of this one sentence that he said that destroyed all possibilities of him becoming an immortal. Ever since then, he fell to the ground and became a demon. He walked through the human world, experienced the joys and sorrows of partings and reunions, saw all the streets and alleys, and slept in the tea house as a dissolute young master. He only remembered the person who disciplined him the moment they met at the foot of the Kunlun mountain. However, the two of them could no longer meet, or wherever he was, he would try his best not to appear. However, many people did not understand that those who cultivated the demonic path were not necessarily bad, and those who cultivated the celestial path were not necessarily good. When many people did something wrong, not only did they not dare to admit it, they would also push the blame. This was human nature. There was never a distinction between the demonic path and the celestial path, because the person who cultivated the demonic path was very flamboyant, and even had many secrets about some people. The more guilty a person was, the more they would want to bite the other person first. They would never remember what they had done, and would only talk about how the person who cultivated the demonic path was like. First, they would smear their reputation, and then they would set a trap. They received news that the person who cultivated the demonic path would go through a tribulation every 10 years, so they used this opportunity to attract 10,000 bolts of lightning. Ever since the demon saint was destroyed, everyone thought that his soul would be completely gone. Unexpectedly, he actually fell into the yellow springs, leaving behind a wisp of his soul. They said that the person who destroyed him was not these people who cultivated the righteous path, but because he refused to obey the heavenly mandate. However, on this day, there was also a person who refused to obey the heavenly mandate. He used his immortal bones, flesh, and blood in exchange for a change of fate. The change was not his, but someone else, the person who should have ended here. Buddha asked him if he would regret turning from an immortal into a being that didn't know what was good or bad. He replied that he didn't regret it. The person he missed the most was when he had met him when he was 8 years old. Now, his luck was full, and he could take all of it. Buddha shook his head. This was a high immortal, the person with the most spiritual energy. How could he end up like this? He didn't agree, and only said that this was the heavenly mandate. He laughed, and the white sword in his hand turned into a sword shadow. With blood as a guide, he cleared out hell, and caused the 3 realms to shake. That night, there were no ghosts on the 800-mile road to the Yellow Springs. There were only dazzling and blooming mandalas. The road that was built seemed to be calling someone home. When Guanyin saw this, she shed a tear. The bell of Layin Temple rose and fell, and Buddha only chanted Amitabha. With that, little Tiger Bo tilted her head, looking as though she was waiting for a compliment. Momo, is this story good? You should continue making it up. Chin Mo glanced sideways at her. Little Tiger Bo wagged her tail. Let me think about it. I'll tell you tomorrow. Be good and sleep first. That way, you will get better. Chin Mo looked at the little face that was very close to him. He pinched it with his fingers. Silly, don't worry. Huh? Little Tiger Bo blinked in confusion. Chin Mo's drug took effect. When the little person was about to close her eyes, her voice floated over. Even if we are different after we grow up, I won't let anyone hurt you. Little Tiger Bo heard this sentence. Her pair of tiger eyes lit up slightly. In reality, little Tiger Bo more or less understood that ordinary people wouldn't be able to accept what she was going to do in the future. She had watched so many cartoons and movies. They all said that people from different worlds would never be together. She had asked Grandpa before. The little princess's family was a policeman. No, that wasn't right. It should be the kind that was more powerful than the police. Anyway, they were specially here to catch her. She didn't want the person who came to catch her to be Momo. She didn't want Momo to hate her after knowing what she did for a living. Hence, even the story she made up revealed a kind of desire. What made her happy was what he said. Chapter 1443. When the two of them were together, time would always pass especially quickly. Little Tiger Bo leaned against Chin Mo's head to sleep. When she woke up, it was already late at night. Only then did she remember that people who were sick had to eat more. There was no one at home, so little Tiger Bo volunteered to cook a bowl of noodles. She didn't know if it was because the color was too heavy or because of the seasoning. After Chin Mo ate it, he didn't recover. He even got enteritis. Later, the doctor explained the reason. When he had a cold, his digestive system was weak. Moreover, the seasoning of the instant noodles was too greasy. It wasn't strange for this to happen. Little Tiger Bo felt very guilty. She climbed the wall at night and asked Chin Mo to forgive her. At that time, Chin Mo didn't have any strength at all. He simply said, "Come up." When the little tiger climbed up, he reached out and hugged her. She was soft and fluffy, causing his lips to lift subconsciously. Little Bojo, are you an idiot? No, Little Tiger Bo said seriously. Little Tiger Bo said seriously, but Momo, this is the first time you took the initiative to hug me. Should I celebrate? Do you want me to sell you? Chin Mo glanced at her. I'm very expensive. I will work hard to earn money. Little Tiger Bo clenched her small fists. Chin Mo held her fists. When you are 18, I will tell you if I will sell you or not. 18. Little Tiger Bo counted with her fingers. There was still a long time. Can't you agree now? Chin Mo raised his eyebrows. No. All right, 18. I will definitely be taller by then. I will be like my mother and wear a suit to look for you. The more Bojio spoke, the more comfortable she felt. Chin Mo frowned. Suit? Shouldn't you wear a skirt? No, the overbearing CEOs in the movies all wear suits. Little Tiger Bo yawned as she spoke. Her small head rested on Chin Mo's shoulder like a real little tiger. She wagged her tail twice. Momo, I'm sleepy. She was asking Chin Mo to coax her. Some habits were probably formed through nurturing. Before she knew Chin Mo, Bojio would never let anyone coax her to sleep. But now that she was listless, she would lean her little head on Chin Mo's shoulder. Chin Mo would pat her back from time to time and say something in a cold and pleasant voice. It was nothing more than asking her to sleep. There were only a few days left before the Spring Festival. No matter what, Old Master had to make a trip back to China, and so did Chin Mo. When Little Tiger Bo heard this news, she went into Chin Mo's little panda luggage. Momo, I'll be your checked luggage. Bring me along. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of bringing a certain little tiger along with him. Chin Mo went to ask, but the lazy Mr. Bo didn't agree. He smiled faintly and said, no. It was also that day that Chin Mo smelled the scent of blood on this adult. Even though he was wearing a trench coat, the scent was faintly discernible. But before Auntie Bo came back, he entered the bathroom. Chin Mo was a child who could keep things in his heart. That was probably what people with high IQ were like. He left a medicine box at the Bo family's house and didn't say anything. But Chin Mo didn't feel good about not being able to bring his little tiger along. Especially when he was about to get into the car, he saw a certain someone's round tiger eyes. When I'm not around, listen to Uncle Bo, don't climb the wall all the time. You can't eat too much of the candy I give you. If you're hungry, use the key I gave you to enter the house. I've stuffed the snacks in the cupboard full. There are ready-made canned beef. Eat less instant noodles. You have my house number. Call me if you need anything. Don't be mischievous. Chin Mo couldn't help but pinch her face. I'll be back soon. Little Tiger Bo hugged her little keyboard and nodded. She counted the time in her heart. 3 days wasn't too long. It was within his acceptable range. Even so. When the bus was about to leave, Little Tiger Bo didn't let go of Chin Mo's sleeve. But what stunned Grandpa wasn't Little Tiger Bo's actions. It was because his grandson obviously didn't want to leave. This was a completely different attitude from when he first arrived at this place. The most surprising thing was, when the car started to move, his grandson started to be absent-minded. From boarding the plane to taking off and landing, his grandson's face did not show any trace of a smile again. It wasn't until he picked up his phone and made an overseas call that his face warmed up a little. At that time, WeChat didn't exist. It wasn't as convenient as it was now. He had to use a computer to make a video call. But it was nearing the new year. Even children were busy. Moreover, there was a time difference between the two of them. The moment Chin Mo returned to the military courtyard, he was surrounded by children. He didn't have time to make a call. When he finished visiting his relatives and picked up his phone, he realized that the time wasn't right. Most importantly, he had originally planned to return after New Year's Eve. Because Madam suddenly had an important matter to deal with. Therefore, the deadline to return was lengthened. Fortunately, Chin Mo was free. He could coordinate with a certain little tiger's time to make a call. But no one picked up the call. Bojo wasn't at home. Instead, she followed Mr. Bo to the university. This time, she wasn't acting cute. Although it looked like it. Bojo was still wearing her little old axe pajamas. But this wasn't Mr. Bo's motive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought his daughter to school at such a time. Something happened in the hacker world. This wasn't the first time. It had never been peaceful. This was the life he chose. But in terms of privacy, there had never been such a big oversight like this time. Some people would know him sooner or later. In the past, Mr. Bo wasn't worried about these things. But it was different now. The one lying under his desk and the woman in the opposite building were his lifeline. They were all his lifeline. Although he had already sent out a call and was waiting for the butler to come. But this also meant that Joe wouldn't have a choice anymore. Mr. Bo looked up and glanced at the English words on the blackboard. He supported his chin with one hand and asked casually, "Joe, do you like what we are doing now?" Little Tiger Bo leaned against the corner of the desk. She didn't say anything. Instead, she used the small keyboard to type 3 words over. Mr. Bo tilted his head. His gaze deepened. That's good. The most important thing now was to hide Joe well. As for him, he would distract the attention of those people. He couldn't really let them find anything. He had to think carefully about moving back to the castle. Chapter 1444. The university was undoubtedly the safest place. Mr. Bo's current identity wouldn't make anyone suspicious. Especially when he and the little tiger sat on the stairs and waited for Mrs. Bo to pick them up. One big and one small, both holding a bag of yogurt in their mouths. The little tiger wagged her tail. "Dad, I want to eat chicken wings." "Lord Joe, you have to change your habit of eating right after waking up." Mr. Bo yawned and said lazily, "Roll around later and my wife will bring you to eat." The little tiger felt that she should educate a certain adult. "Dad, I'm already 5 years old, not 1. If I roll around and act cute, it's too shameless. What do you think I should do?" Mr. Bo's voice was indifferent. "Mrs. Bo said that she doesn't want you to eat junk food." The little tiger thought about it seriously. "Then, I'll roll around. Roll a few more times. I want to eat too." Mr. Bo smiled. He reached out and pulled his collar. There was a different kind of mischievous look on his face. The little tiger nodded her head and gave him an "okay" gesture. One big and one small, they maintained their previous sitting posture. The two faces were very eye-catching. Many university students looked over. They were extremely cute. Mr. Bo was quite famous in the university. This wasn't the first time he brought Bojo to wait for Mrs. Bo. But every time, the foreigners would feel a strong impact. They wanted to give birth to a Xiao Naofu too. Mrs. Bo was wearing a professional suit and high heels. The moment she walked into the university, she saw this scene. The two of them were drinking yogurt again. Was the food in the university so bad? Mrs. Bo couldn't help but smile. She walked over. Little Tiger Bo was the first to see Mrs. Bo. Her round tiger eyes lit up instantly. She pounced towards Mrs. Bo. "Mom. Are you good today?" Mrs. Bo looked at her attire and rolled up her daughter's sleeves. Little Tiger Bo reported seriously, "I'm very good. Dad has been sleeping." "Hey." Mr. Bo smiled lazily. He freed one hand and knocked the book on Little Tiger Bo's head. Then he leaned forward and placed his head on Mrs. Bo's shoulder. "I didn't sleep on purpose. I wrote too many documents and felt dizzy." It was rare to see Mrs. Bo with such an aura. When she appeared, many people looked in her direction. Successful people and students who were still in school had different auras to begin with. The more it was like this, the easier it was to prove that the extremely handsome PhD student was actually a sugar daddy of some female entrepreneur. Many hot girls and new students felt that it was a pity. He really couldn't understand why he had to find someone older than him. Of course, the man's appearance was impeccable. He looked no different from them in terms of age. Due to the nurturing of her temperament, she gave off the feeling of an iceberg beauty for no reason, but it was different from that. Because when she was wearing a professional suit, the feeling of a superior was not only that of a beauty, but also an indescribable sense of coldness and abstinence. "Why are you feeling dizzy all of a sudden?" As Mrs. Bow spoke, she stretched out her hand and rubbed a certain adult's head. Little Tiger Bow completely understood her father's tricks. When it came to fighting for favor with her, her father always spared no effort. Anyway, he wasn't too afraid that people in school would say that he was a sugar daddy. From a certain point of view, Mr. Bow was indeed like a little puppy. However, when the people beside him saw his actions just now, they all asked themselves if this was the evil senior they knew. They didn't feel like it. Mr. Bow didn't care about other people's opinions. Recently, Mrs. Bow had been too cold to him. He had to find some sense of existence. Little Tiger Bow didn't forget what happened just now. She wagged her tail and blinked her tiger eyes slightly. Dad said that he wanted to eat chicken wings just now. His dizziness should be because he is hungry. Mr. Bow glanced over and raised his eyebrows. His Lord Gio and that fellow from the Chin family were so good that they knew how to use others as a shield. Chicken wings? Mrs. Bow seemed to be helpless between the two of them. She sighed slightly. Just one meal. After that, I will go to the airport. Both of you eat some vegetables tonight. You can't eat meat all the time. Mr. Bow hugged her waist and planted a kiss on her lips. Don't worry, I will take good care of Lord Gio. Mrs. Bow didn't expect such a sudden action from him. The people around them were looking at them. Was he no longer resisting letting others know what their relationship was? Or was he too young and always did things according to his mood? Mrs. Bow could more or less understand this from him. She tried not to talk about their relationship in public. It wasn't because he said anything, but she could feel it. After all, he didn't even introduce his tutor and some people he knew from school. Mrs. Bow understood him on this point. It was probably strange. They had been married for so many years. She would still care about such things occasionally. It was fine this time. The last time she came to pick him up alone, she saw a girl asking him out. He rejected her. That girl said, "You can't always live off a woman like this." Mrs. Bow knew about a man's pride, so she chose not to appear. But when she thought about it carefully, the situation at home. He got his degree by himself. The clothes he was wearing were indeed bought by her, but he didn't show any signs of liking or disliking them. Even his tomahawk was his own. He shouldn't have any negative feelings in this aspect. But the people around her said that she was born strong. Big boys like him usually liked cute and lively girls or little fairies. They liked to attach themselves to people and were romantic and innocent. Mrs. Bow didn't ask him about this aspect. After all, when this person looked at her, he was really clingy. She always forgot that they weren't suitable for each other. At the start, Little Tiger Bow was still in Mrs. Bow's arms. Unknowingly, Mr. Bow carried her over and placed her on his neck. Little Tiger Bow grabbed her father's unruly hair and wagged her tail behind her. She didn't want to act cute. But when they saw such a handsome man with a little tiger on his head, people would look at him. Boss Lou? Mrs. Bow's surname was Lou. She followed chauffeur all year round. This time, when she saw her boss come out, she walked over and was about to open the car door. But Mrs. Bow stopped him. We will eat nearby. Old Juan, you should go and eat something too. Okay, Boss Lou. With that, Old Juan glanced in Mr. Bow's direction and greeted him respectfully. Sir. Although he didn't understand why Boss Lou chose such a person, since Boss Lou had agreed to it, as a driver, he wouldn't say much. Miss Gio was as lovable as ever. Old Juan smiled as he looked at the little tiger. This was probably the most unusual and happiest family he had ever met. However, Boss Lou was usually too busy. As for Mr. Bo, there was something that was hard to explain. He liked to stick to Boss Lou too much, but he wasn't like an ordinary gigolo. He couldn't explain it. He just hoped that Mr. Bo wouldn't let Boss Lou down. It was always a happy thing to have chicken wings. There were cola, fries, and hamburgers on the table. Mrs. Bo was rolling up her daughter's sleeves. When she looked up, there was a hamburger in front of her. After seeing her take a bite, the person smiled. This smile didn't matter. The people eating here were all university students. Many of them looked straight at him. However, in the next second, he didn't know what happened. The person's fingers paused for a moment. He raised his gaze slightly and looked out of the window. The color of his eyes darkened. The sound of the police car rushing past rang in her ears. This wasn't the most important thing. Instead, it was a few people dressed in black under the tree. They seemed to be asking something. What's wrong? Mrs. Bo followed his gaze but didn't see anything. Mr. Bo took a bite of the hamburger. Nothing. I have classes in the afternoon. I probably can't send you off. Mrs. Bo paused. Then, she smiled and said, I know. Eat more. He probably had some concerns. This time, there were more people who saw them. The meal was finished very quickly. When Mrs. Bo was around, Mr. Bo was still lazy. He waited until she left. After she left, he made a call. Come over and bring Joe back. Yes, boss. On the other end of the line was a very magnetic British voice. Little Tiger Bo had heard it before, but this time, it was a little different. It seemed a little deep. After around 5 minutes, a black Lamborghini appeared in front of the school gate. A black Lamborghini appeared in front of the school gate. A man got out of the car with something that looked like a suitcase in his hand. But a normal suitcase wouldn't be carried by hand. In addition, the person was wearing a black tuxedo and white gloves. He looked like a noble deacon in the movies. Even though he was already middle-aged, it was rare for a middle-aged person to wear a formal suit so handsomely. But this person was able to express his mature gentlemanly aura to the fullest. That wasn't all. He was also carrying a small cake box. When he saw Bojo, he placed his right hand behind his back and smiled lightly. Young lord, I finally see you. At that time, the word young lord was a little unfamiliar to Bojo. But even now, she was very clear about what she wanted to do in the future. He blinked his tiger eyes and looked at the person in front of him. The old butler was so cute that his heart almost melted. This was completely different from his master. His young lord was a little tiger, a very, very cute little tiger. His master was completely different. The dark aura was thicker. It had been like this since he was young. Mr. Bo allowed the two of them to interact. He took the suitcase from the butler's hands. He opened it in the car. At this time, there weren't many people in front of the university. The mystery of the suitcase was that you wouldn't be able to guess that it would open so many layers. Other than a black trench coat, there was also a small notebook and some weapons inside. Mr. Bo changed into the trench coat first. Then, he lifted the suitcase. He wore his glasses and looked very gentle. He didn't look like he was going to do anything. But if people knew what he was taking, they would know what he was going to do next. He was going to get rid of a few bugs. As for little Tiger Bo, she was naturally brought back by the butler. According to Mr. Bo's instructions, it was most reliable to send her to the William family. That was because that family was born to be dramatic. They were so careless that they wouldn't think about what happened. On the other hand, the butler was very polite. He bowed towards little William and said, Young lord, I'll have to trouble you for a day. Little William's eyes widened. After all, he had only seen such a person in the movies his father filmed. Little Tiger Bo didn't need to trouble others. But similarly, she knew that her father had something to do. Little Tiger Bo was a thoughtful person. When she smelled the different atmosphere this time, she climbed up to the window several times to take a look. It wasn't until much later that his father finally showed up. Mr. Bo was here to bring little Tiger Bo home. In reality, other than that kid from the Qin family, he didn't feel at ease leaving Jiao in the hands of anyone else for a day. It wasn't that the others weren't good. To be honest, the others weren't smart enough. For example, right now, little William couldn't tell that Mr. Bo's hand was injured no matter how hard he looked. After all, he was still the same as before. His tie wasn't tied properly and was half slanted to the side. It was obvious that he was living off a woman. Only her lips were a little pale. Only little Tiger Bo could tell that something was wrong with her father. She didn't let him hug her. Instead, she held his hand and walked home. When they were halfway there, Mr. Bo leaned against the tree trunk. His breathing was unstable. Jiao, little Tiger Bo was still very capable. Even a child would feel uncomfortable seeing such a scene. But he didn't panic at all. He took out his phone from his father's pocket and called Grandpa Butler. From making the call to hanging up the phone and waiting for the butler to arrive, the entire process was completely unlike that of a 5-year-old child. However, her little hands were trembling a little, and the tiger did not even lift its head. After Grandpa Butler rushed over, he started to treat his master's injuries. The hand injury was easy to deal with, but the bullet in his shoulder had to be taken out. This was how his master was able to walk all the way and still take the time to call his madam. He smiled gently. Lord Jiao. She is downstairs, playing with her little keyboard. Don't worry, I will take good care of her. After hanging up the phone, his breath leaked out. The temperature was a little high. Grandpa Butler prescribed a lot of medicine. After treating the wound, he said, "It's all thanks to young Lord's timely call." Mr. Bo leaned against the wall. One of his shoulders was wrapped in bandages. His long and narrow eyes were tilted upwards. He had the aura of a king that he didn't have in front of others. That's why I said that she is very suitable to take over my position, both technically and psychologically. Words to the readers, this book is participating in the QQ reading event. As long as the readers have tipped, they can participate in the lucky draw. There are many prizes. Everyone, please leave more comments and participate. I wish everyone a big prize. The prizes are as follows. 1. Reading points / book coins. 2. Author discount coupon / book discount coupon. Chapter 1445. Downstairs. Little Tiger Bo was tapping on her keyboard. She was trying to use her computer to contact Momo. But when she went into the chat tool, she looked at the time on the monitor. The sky in China wasn't bright yet. Momo was definitely sleeping. Little Tiger Bo paused and scratched her face. Then she looked up and glanced at the second floor. Recently, her father had been more mysterious than before. She didn't know what happened. If Momo was here, he could help her analyze it. Momo seemed to know everything. Little Tiger Bo hugged her little keyboard. She glanced at the gray profile picture again. Her tiger tail drooped and she couldn't help but mutter, "Momo, I miss you." At that time, Bo Jiao was still young. She spoke in a childish voice, which was very likable. It would make people forget all the mischief she had done when she was naughty. Qin Mo had asked himself this before. What was so good about that person? He couldn't say it. But he couldn't find another person like that person. But there seemed to be something buried in his heart and he couldn't take it out. But even if he was half a world away, that person's shadow would still appear in front of his eyes. In China, there were many gatherings and rules after the Chinese New Year. It was especially so for aristocratic families like the An family and the Qin family. Hence, when the Chinese New Year arrived, Qin Mo had to go to many places. He would visit every old general in the courtyard. In the north, this was called New Year greeting. The Qin family had always been conservative. They always valued Chinese etiquette. But this year, when Qin Mo was greeting them, he was obviously distracted. When he saw the children there, he would pause for a moment. There were always fights in the courtyard. It was the kind of fight between boys. In the past, when they saw Chin Mo, they would automatically restrain themselves. After all the children in the courtyard knew that Chin Mo might look like a gentle little prince, but when he fought, it was really painful. But today, when they saw them gathering here, he acted as though he didn't see it. What was going on? The children couldn't understand. A little girl called Brother Mo came over. Chin Mo didn't turn back. This was really not in line with his usual etiquette. Just when all the children noticed that Chin Mo was different, Chin Mo's eyes lit up. When Chin Mo saw these people, he kept wondering what the little tiger was doing. Did she not eat properly again? It should be impossible. When he left, he had told her to go to his room to get snacks if she was hungry. It was just that the phone at home rarely rang. Because of this, he specifically told Aunt Zhang that if there was a call, she had to tell him no matter what. There was no movement on the internet either. Although he did not want to admit it. But there was a thought that was getting stronger and stronger. Worried about the time he was away. Little William coughed lightly. Nothing. So he really wasn't around. That's good. I felt that you heaved a sigh of relief just now, Bojo said in a tiger's voice when she faced Little William. Little William, no, I didn't. Let's not talk about this. Joe, we have to leave quickly. Okay. Little Tiger Bo wasn't wearing her tiger pajamas. Instead, she was wearing a taekwondo uniform. The black belt was very eye-catching. This was also the reason why Little William didn't dare to touch Bojo. However, he was also very puzzled. Why didn't Jo show her skills in front of the little demon? When he thought about this, Little William couldn't hold it in anymore. He asked what was on his mind. Bojo sized him up from head to toe before saying, Momo isn't like you. Momo is good-looking and gentle. He gets shy easily. If I use force, I will scare him. Little William. When you beat me up until my face is swollen, you never considered that you would scare me. Also, look at my eyes. They are blue. Don't you Asians like eyes that are like the sea? As expected, his daddy was lying to him. Joe was completely different from those actors who came overseas to develop their careers. This wasn't the first time Little William's heart felt stifled. Fortunately, this child's self-healing ability was good. In less than 10 minutes, he started to call Joe his brother again. Every time Bojo came to this kind of production, she would help Little William settle some trouble. Little William didn't like people trying to get close to him because of his father. But because of his personality, he couldn't say anything. Usually, Joe would stand there and look at those people. She would ask them if they wanted to go and play. Then, she would solve the problem perfectly. It was the same this time. The difference was that Little William was still playing around. Although he was very interested in the Eastern faith, he was also in awe of it. But he didn't seem to have any requests. On the other hand, Bojo ran here and there. She didn't seem to care about the sweat on her face. She was really like a little tiger. She knelt on the horsetail whisk mat seriously. Her small hands were clasped together. Her round eyes didn't blink. It was rare for such a young child to be able to do this. Unless she was a little monk in a temple. She was probably too young. An old monk wearing a robe walked over and chanted, Amitabha. He had seen countless people, but he had rarely seen such a fate. Her murderous aura filled the sky, but she had a Buddhist fate. What kind of fate was this? Bojo probably heard this voice. She tilted her head and blinked her eyes at him like a little tiger. Master. The old monk was stunned when he saw her. His gaze landed on the tear mole at the corner of her eye. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand, wanting to touch the child's head. Little Tiger Bo was still kneeling there. Her small face was very serious. Master, I want to ask for 2 protective amulets. 2? The old monk asked. For yourself? Little almsgiver, if you ask for too many protective amulets, they won't work. Little Tiger Bo shook her head. I don't want it for myself. One is for my parents and the other is for Momo. I hope that they can be safe. Master, I only have this one wish. Isn't it working? The old monk looked into her eyes. After a long time, he said, you can make other wishes. You don't have to ask for your parents. Blessings can be given to others. Why not yourself? It's my good fortune that Momo is safe and sound. Little Tiger Bo's eyes were very big. They gave people a furry feeling. Even though it was a life of misfortune. It's my fortune that Momo is safe and sound. The old monk was shocked. In that case, I will give 2 protective amulets to Little Almsgiver. If Little Almsgiver regrets it, you don't have to give one of the protective amulets. When Little Tiger Bo received the 2 protective amulets, her eyes lit up. I won't regret it. Thank you, Master. After she finished speaking, she even bowed to him. The old monk stood there and chanted Ba again. He only retracted his gaze when the small voice could no longer be heard. Should he say that children were all sincere? That was why he said such words. However, how much did a person value another person in order to treat that person's safety as his own blessing? The old monk looked up at the Buddha statue in the middle. A novice monk came over to invite him to the front hall. He said that all the believers were here. The old monk waved his hand. Today's grace has been given out. Ask the benefactors to come next month. Given out? The novice monk scratched the back of his head. When did he give it out? Didn't his master just come out? Moreover, he could give 3 people a month. This was what his master had promised. Why did he push it to next month the moment he came out? The novice monk didn't understand. Master, if you give out the grace, there are still 2 people left. No. The old monk reached out and touched his disciple's head. Go. Tell me the truth. The novice monk replied, yes. He didn't understand who was lucky enough to get 3 sets of grace from his master. After all, the grace given by his master was always effective. This was also the reason why so many people came here. Hence, people only knew that Chin Mo wrote in the amulet. He said that his wish was for the little tiger to live a peaceful and happy life. They didn't know what Bojo got for him. Little William didn't look over. He felt that this place was mysterious. There were some places that he couldn't get out of. It didn't look like the buildings and specifications of their foreign countries. Fortunately, Grandfather Butler was here. It was strange. In the past, Joe never needed to bring anyone along when they went out. Why was this Grandpa Butler following him and Joe wherever they went this time? Fortunately, it didn't affect their play. Little William was curious about what Bojo asked for. Joe, go and pay your respects to the Eastern gods. What did you ask for? They said that you can shake the Buddha. I can't remember what the Buddha is. Anyway, you can ask for a marriage. I already have Momo. I don't need to ask for a marriage. The only flaw was that Momo still hadn't agreed to sell her to be her pet. Little William's lips froze on the spot. Joe, did you consider my feelings when you said that? Obviously, there was none. The 2 children ate ice cream together. With Grandfather Butler following them, Little William experienced what it felt like to have a mouth that didn't have time to stop. There was always delicious food for them to eat. Also, there wasn't a fixed time. Hence, they played a little late. Chin Mo landed at 1 p.m. There was a driver arranged by Old Master and at the airport. It wasn't important who would bring him back. After all, a certain little tiger was so young. It wasn't possible for her to come and fetch him. Also, until now, she didn't know that he was coming back. Chin Mo looked at the big and small bags on the back seat. He used his brain a little and he could imagine the expression on the little tiger's face when she saw him and the pile of snacks. She would definitely pounce on him, hug his waist and say that she missed him. He knew a certain someone's routine very well. With that in mind, Chin Mo tilted his head, the corners of his lips curving upwards. The driver looked at the rearview mirror in confusion. Young master, why are you smiling? Is there something interesting happening outside? There wasn't any. They were on a long bridge and there were cars everywhere. Then, why was young master smiling? Of course, Chin Mo wouldn't say that he couldn't help but smile when he thought of a certain little tiger. He just tilted his head and said faintly, nothing. But as he got closer, he couldn't help but smile. It was faint and faint. He was about to see a certain little tiger. At this time, she should still be doing her mission. Chapter 1446. There was no response. Was it because she was too serious about her mission? Chin Mo thought that a certain little tiger might be wearing earphones. He looked up and glanced at the balcony that connected the two houses. Wearing a down jacket, he did something he had never done before. He learned from a certain little tiger and climbed over the wall. He probably wasn't familiar with her. When someone like Chin Mo climbed over the wall, he gave off a feeling that it didn't match his temperament. When the young golden-haired butler came back, he saw this scene. At first, when he saw the small figure, he thought that Miss Jio was being naughty again. He said anxiously in English, "Oh no, Miss Jio, young master will be back soon. If you do this, young master will be back soon." When the golden-haired butler saw the cold little face, even the hair on his head was shocked. How was this possible? Everyone knew that their young master was a model when it came to etiquette. How could he climb the wall? Why are you shouting? Chin Mo lowered his gaze and glanced at him. His voice was indifferent. The golden-haired butler stood there in a suit. No, nothing. He really wanted Miss Jio to see how his young master looked when he climbed the wall. He really wanted to laugh. Chin Mo ignored him. After standing on the balcony, he walked towards the floor-to-ceiling window. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, he could clearly see that there was no one inside. Uncle Bo and the others weren't here. Even a certain little tiger wasn't here. The room wasn't that messy. Suddenly, it was so clean. It seemed as though the owner hadn't come back. Of course, at that time, Chin Mo didn't have the inhuman ability to speculate as he grew up. After all, he was still a child. But the feeling was right. Chin Mo looked in a certain direction through the floor-to-ceiling window. A certain little tiger should have been sitting there. Her little claws were tapping on the keyboard. She must have scratched her face from time to time because she didn't know how to roll up her sleeves. However, she looked as though she was the most serious. Otherwise, she would lie at the side and grab snacks to eat. If he hadn't asked her to sit on the chair, she would have been naughty forever. Chin Mo didn't think that the room would be so empty without the little tiger that was crawling back and forth. Downstairs, the golden-haired butler looked at the back of the little figure standing on the balcony. He didn't understand why. From his angle, his young master's face seemed a little disappointed. He didn't wait for him to see clearly. Chin Mo slid down the wall. What was going on with the Bo family recently? He didn't know if it was because he was too serious about this problem, or if he didn't have any experience in climbing walls. When Chin Mo came down, he accidentally cut his hand. The young golden-haired butler exclaimed and hurriedly ran over. "Young master, are you all right?" "I just wiped my hand. What can happen? Let's go back first." Chin Mo tilted his head and glanced at the back of his hand. His face was as calm as ever. He was still wearing the small black down jacket. Chin Mo really didn't expect that the little tiger wouldn't be around at this time. It wasn't because of what her grandfather had said, but because he missed her. How could he be so childish? Once again, Chin Mo denied his grandfather's words. However, his eyes turned to look behind him. He bought her so many things. I wanted her to see it sooner. That was why he didn't even go home and went straight to the Bo family's house. Chapter 1447. The golden-haired butler felt a little disappointed. His young master felt a little disappointed. Was it because of the huge difference between Chinese and Western culture? He couldn't find a better adjective? Or was it because Miss Jill wasn't by his young master's side today? That was why he felt that the tall and straight-back view was different from other times. It made sense. Usually, at this time, what was his young master doing? He was either helping Miss Jo to roll up her clothes or helping her to put on a scarf. He would even put on a hat so that Miss Jo wouldn't see the road. He wanted her to not be so naughty and obediently let his young master hold her hand and walk. But today, his young master didn't do any of these. When he walked forward, he felt a little lonely. He couldn't remember the Chinese saying. Anyway, it was just a lonely shadow. At this moment, a car light suddenly shone over. At this moment, Qin Mo realized that the sky had turned dark. He turned his head and saw that the car was parked in front of the Bo family's house. But that car didn't belong to the Bo family. Just as Qin Mo furrowed his brows, the car door was suddenly pushed open. The car door was suddenly pushed open and a little tiger jumped out. She shouted, "Momo, Momo." She pounced towards his direction. Because she was too happy, little Tiger Bo forgot to control her strength. She accidentally pushed Qin Mo onto the ground. "Momo, why are you here?" Her big tiger eyes were round and black. She couldn't hide the joy in her eyes. Qin Mo didn't correct her about her strength. This was the first time he didn't tell little Bojio not to pounce on him so easily. Instead, he turned his head and placed his hand on her waist. He probably wanted to enjoy this reunion after a long time. That was why he wanted them to be closer. But he didn't want others to see his emotions. Thus, he buried his head on the little tiger's shoulder. His voice was calm. "I'm back." This was the first time little Tiger Bo saw her little princess Qin being so proactive and a little shy. She happily took out the amulet she had begged from Master. Without thinking, she pulled a red string and put it around his neck. "Momo, a present for you." Qin Mo replied, "MMH." His voice didn't sound like anything. But the young golden-haired butler could see the slight difference when he looked at him. The smile on his young master's face was too obvious. Was he that happy? Also, don't think that young master's N is nothing. Except for the things that Miss Jio gave him, he would accept them. If anyone else offered it to him, he would politely reject it. As long as the person who gave the gift was Miss Jio. Whether it was a small stone, a wild mushroom, or that huge piggy bank. This kind of inconspicuous thing was placed in the most conspicuous place in the room by the young master. It was impossible for others to touch it. On the other hand, the young master loved it when people asked him questions like, "Where did you buy this tiger piggy bank? It's rare to see such a big one." The young master would always reply lightly, "A certain little tiger gave it to me." In fact, the corners of his mouth were curling up slightly. At that time, the young butler inexplicably understood why the young master would place these things in the most conspicuous place. He was clearly showing off. Now, it seemed that the young master had one more thing to show off. The two little people hugged each other on the ground for a long time. Little Tiger Bo was still instructing, "Momo, the amulet can't leave your body. If not, it won't work. Momo, you must listen to me. MMH, listen to me." At the end of her sentence, little Tiger Bo stretched out her hand and touched Qin Mo's head. Grandfather Butler wasn't around. Besides the driver and the bodyguard, there was another person in the car. It was little William. He always felt that Jio had a special characteristic. It was that after seeing that little demon from the east, she would automatically block everyone around her. Little William followed them and called Bojio. Then, he said, "Jio, let's meet at another place tomorrow. If Uncle Bo doesn't come back today, come to my house and sleep." Grandfather Butler said not to stay at home alone. Little Tiger Bo didn't feel anything when she heard this. This was the sentence that little William said the most these 2 days. When had little Tiger Beau ever listened to him? But the moment Chin Mo saw little William, the color of his eyes darkened. A certain little tiger alighted from William's family car. Also, sleep, sleep. This was the first time Chin Mo felt a huge rock pressing on his chest. Angry? Disappointed? Angry? Probably all of them. That was why Chin Mo couldn't control himself. Before little William could say anything, he pulled little Tiger Beau up from his body. He ignored everyone and pulled her wrist directly into the Anne's house. He couldn't control his strength. But Chin Mo didn't understand. She was the one who was pulled up by brute force. Why was he the one who felt his fingers hurting? The place where he got scratched when he climbed over the wall just now seemed to be on fire. It was burning. It seemed as though something was burning in his chest. He thought that she would listen to him and not go out with anyone else. He admitted that his possessiveness wasn't normal. As an ordinary child, how could she not play with others? But Chin Mo couldn't control his thoughts. For example, he kept thinking that this was the little tiger he was raising. The little tiger should only look at him and play with him. She shouldn't be close to others. He only raised this little tiger. He wasn't interested in other people at all. Since he could do it, a certain little tiger should be able to do it too. But not only did she not listen to him, she even became so intimate with little William. When Chin Mo lowered his gaze, he tried to calm his emotions but he couldn't. Little Bojo, how many times have I told you? You are a girl. Can't a girl be reserved? Little Tiger Beau's small face was serious. I'm very reserved. You pounce on people whenever you see them. Is that considered being reserved? Chin Mo knew that he was venting his anger but he couldn't control it. Little Tiger Beau's round eyes were a little gray. Momo, if you don't like me like this, I won't pounce on you in the future. This isn't the first time you said this. You even said that you would listen to me obediently. Forget it, why am I telling you this? Little Bojo, I've said it before, if you want to play with others, don't play with me. Bojo's eyes were cold as she looked at Bojo. After he finished speaking, Chin Mo turned and walked towards the stairs. Little Tiger Beau instinctively wanted to hug him. Don't always use this method. Chin Mo tilted his head. His small side profile was handsome and cold. If you want to play with others, then play with them. I don't want to control you anymore. Little Tiger Beau was a little hurt when she heard this. I didn't ask you to control me. You are too strict. I'm just mischievous. I didn't do anything bad. When Chin Mo heard this, he didn't say anything else. He went upstairs directly. The young golden-haired butler was a little dumbfounded when he saw this. After all, he had never seen these two little people quarrel. Miss Joe and his young master were so close that people would think that they were biological siblings. After all, when his young master treated Miss Joe, he always spoiled her. Hence, no matter what Miss Joe did, he never got angry. At most, he would frown and lower his gaze to clean up Miss Joe. Miss Joe, on the other hand, liked to give gifts to his young master. She always acted like she wanted to take care of him. In this house, Miss Joe was the one who poured water and brought fruits. This was the first time the two of them quarreled. The young golden-haired butler wanted to say something. Little Tiger Beau couldn't take it anymore. She stood there, not being stubborn anymore. Her little head was lowered. No one knew what she was thinking about. Then she lifted the little keyboard and walked out of the door. She was listless the entire time. She also wondered if she was being too passionate at times. But she thought that Momo liked it. If not, Momo wouldn't allow her to fool around. She knew that she was mischievous. But she had been controlled for so long. How could he just ignore her when he said so? Couldn't he be more trustworthy? Little Tiger Beau was so angry that she threw the little keyboard in her hands. She didn't want it anymore. But the moment she threw it, she remembered the scene of that person dismantling the little keyboard and reassembling it. she ran back and picked up the little keyboard on the ground. When Mr. Bo saw this scene, he pushed his motorcycle up and lifted his helmet. He whistled in a very cool manner and said lazily, "Who made my Lord Joe angry? I don't want to play with little princess anymore. He doesn't like me at all." Little Tiger Bo hugged the little keyboard. Her lips were pressed into a line. Before Mr. Bo could say anything, Little Tiger Bo opened her mouth again. Little Tiger Bo opened her mouth again. "Dad, can I kidnap little Princess Jean? He won't like me anyway. After I kidnap him, he might fall in love with me after some time." Mr. Bo tilted his helmet and knocked Little Tiger Bo's head. "If you want your dad to be wanted by the entire world, kidnap your little princess." "What should I do? Sigh, I'm so frustrated." Little Tiger Bo tilted her head and lowered her voice. "I haven't seen Momo for a long time. But Momo said that I shouldn't be reserved and that I shouldn't keep pouncing on people." Mr. Bo, who was used to being his daughter's relationship counselor, agreed with her. His voice was still casual. He wore a leather jacket and jeans, looking very cool. "You really shouldn't be so proactive. You should keep that little ice block from the Chin family hanging. Don't say bad things about Momo." Little Tiger Bo was still very protective of her child. "I should be the one saying it." "Mr. Bo. Was this daughter his biological daughter?" "All right, Lord Joe, let's talk tomorrow." Mr. Bo reached out and picked up the little tiger. He placed her on his neck. "Let's go home and sleep." "MMH," Little Tiger Bo replied. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. She grabbed her father's hair with one hand and took out another amulet from the pocket of her jacket with the other hand. "Dad." "Mr. Bo, I refuse to listen to you praising your little princess anymore." Chapter 1448. Little Tiger Bo widened her eyes. She had a serious expression on her face. "I praise my little princess because he is too good. For example, he knows things that Dad doesn't know. Mom says that he has a scholarly aura. He isn't like Dad, who can't pretend no matter how hard he tries. Not only does he feed me, but he also tells me stories before I sleep and teaches me how to write." "Dad, you don't know how to write." In the yard surrounded by white fences, Mr. Bo threw his motorcycle into the yard casually. He didn't seem like an adult at all. "Lord Joe is too much." "What do you mean by pretending?" "I'm a PhD student, understand? I bought it." Little Tiger Bo sat on his neck and grabbed his hair. She glanced down. "Dad, don't talk about this anymore. I want my face too. After all, Mom always says that I'm like you." Mr. Bo yawned and smiled devilishly. "Isn't it good to be like me? That little ice block from the Chin family probably doesn't even know how to climb over a wall." "How boring." Little Tiger Bo blinked. "Momo wouldn't do something like climbing over a wall." "Is that so?" Mr. Bo tapped the black cutter on his wrist. It projected a scene of a little ice block climbing over a wall. There was a surveillance camera in front of the Bo family's house. This was why Mr. Bo could go out and do some things without worry even if there was no one at home. It was because it could be monitored 24 hours a day. After Little Tiger Bo saw the scene, she made a decision in her heart. She definitely wouldn't let her little princess climb over a wall in the future. It was too dangerous. After being interrupted by Mr. Bo, Little Tiger Bo almost forgot to give him her amulet. Fortunately, after she changed into her pajamas, she remembered it and ran to the room next door. Mr. Bo was lying on the sofa. Little Tiger Bo knew that this was her dad's habit. When her mom wasn't around, he liked to sleep like this. He was like a cheetah that was ready to wake up anytime. "Dad, this is for you and Mom." Little Tiger Bo placed the amulet in Mr. Bo's palm. Mr. Bo raised his eyebrows and wore it. He wasn't superstitious, but the Bo family did have this origin. There was one thing that was true. Jill was too suitable to take over his job. Even if this path was difficult. But that seemed to be the case. Some people were destined to bear the responsibility the moment they were born. Mr. Bo leaned on the sofa. If Jill was a sweet princess who didn't know anything, perhaps he would use all his strength to make her continue to not know anything. However, their Lord Jill had always been interested in small keyboards and was very smart. Most of all, she loved it. Mr. Bo stood up. His gaze was deep. Because of this figure, Chin Mo gave up on the idea of asking the butler to call little Tiger Bo back. The Bo family had an adult. It seemed that he had no reason to worry about a certain someone. Chin Mo tilted his head and glanced at his hand. He thought she would be the first to notice his injury. But he didn't. Looking at the snacks they brought back from China, Chin Mo's eyes deepened. He reached out to turn off the lights in the bedroom. He didn't want to treat his wounds, and he didn't even want to sleep. It was probably because he was still jet-lagged. Through the moonlight, Chin Mo looked like a little prince lying on the bed. There didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. In fact, he had already opened his eyes when he reached out his hand to touch a certain small heater. Why did I come back so early? As soon as this thought appeared, it never stopped. Some things, we wanted to go this way. But the world was always unpredictable. There were too many things that were out of his expectations. This was the first time the young Chin Mo knew what insomnia was. But due to his upbringing and etiquette, he wouldn't toss and turn over. He just looked at the seat beside him. A certain little tiger's liking was probably different from his liking. His liking was to monopolize a person. But she wasn't. If that was the case, everything was meaningless. Based on his personality, he should have done this. But when he wanted to raise a little tiger too much, it didn't matter whether it was his personality or not. Since she was still young and didn't understand the difference. Then he would teach her slowly. After thinking through this matter, Chin Mo decided to give a certain little tiger the cold shoulder tomorrow. She was always disobedient. Of course, if a certain little tiger took the initiative to come and reconcile with him tomorrow, he couldn't be too cold and he couldn't vent his anger on her. Even if he really lost his rationality after hearing what William said. But as long as a certain little tiger took the initiative to come and reconcile with him, it didn't matter. The night gradually darkened. At that time, no one would have thought of it. Some things weren't done in time. In the future, they might regret it. Unknowingly, fog started to appear outside. The suitcase that Mr. Bo carried over suddenly rang. This made him, who hadn't slept soundly, open his eyes suddenly. There was a tracking setting inside. Once it locked onto the target, it would make a sound. Without any delay, he unlocked the small suitcase. When he opened it, there was a screen. There was something that looked like a keyboard below. His slender and fair fingers just tapped on it twice. The ordinary screen was changed. It was changed to the most accurate lock-on route map. He used the buttons on the keyboard to enlarge the map. His face, which had always been handsome and devilish, suddenly paled to the extreme. Mr. Bo, who had always been confident in everything, no longer had that sloppy and lazy attitude. He didn't even wear his jacket. He lifted the suitcase and rushed out of the door. Hearing the sound, little Tiger Bo walked out in a daze. She rubbed her eyes and asked, "Dad, where are you going?" It wasn't that her dad had never gone out at night before. It was just that he had never gone out in such a hurry. Even his back view exuded an indescribable feeling. Hearing little Tiger Bo's voice, the slender figure paused for a moment. Then he turned around and emptied one hand to caress Bojo's head. "I'm going to fetch Madame Bo, Mom." Little Tiger Bo knew that her mom was on a business trip. Didn't she say that she would come back in a few days? But it was good that she could come back early. This way, after her dad had her mom, he would be more restrained. With her mom by her dad's side, he wouldn't do anything too dangerous. Little Bojo would always remember that day. Because on that day, the Bo family had undergone an earth-shattering change. The weather outside was very cold. But Mr. Bo didn't seem to feel it at all. Even though he was riding a motorcycle and didn't wear any protective gear, his side profile didn't reveal any expression. That pair of eyes seemed to be dyed with endless darkness. He had never expected that group of people to appear at that place. The city where Madame Bo was on a business trip. This couldn't be a coincidence. There couldn't be such a coincidence. When the old butler received his master's call, it was in the wee hours of the next day. He had never heard his master's voice like that before. It was cold and emotionless. Bring Gio back to the castle. Then, Madam. The old butler knew that Madam was on a business trip. His master had once said that he wanted to trick Madam back to the castle. He had even thought of a scene where he would suddenly inherit his grandfather's inheritance and asked him to disguise himself as a lawyer. Why did he change his mind now? Mr. Bo stood on the street. There were cars everywhere. The sky wasn't completely bright yet. Sporadic lights filled the entire city. It was also in the wee hours of the morning that a mysterious Asian man carrying a suitcase walked into the most famous gray area in the area. The black trench coat made him look like an Avenger who had climbed out of hell. He was cold and handsome. I will bring her back. The old butler realized that something was wrong. But now, the most important thing was to carry out the mission his master had given him. The fog was still there. It was a vast expanse. Ever since Mr. Bo left, little Tiger Bo had been sleeping on the sofa. When she heard the noise downstairs, little Tiger Bo's ears perked up. Then, she picked up the small keyboard at the side. She thought that a thief had barged in. Little Tiger Bo wanted to activate some of the traps she had made herself. After all, the sky wasn't bright yet. She didn't expect to see Grandfather Butler when she went downstairs. Her tail wagged twice. Her little face was still a little puzzled. Grandfather Butler, why are you here? Young lord. The old butler took a step forward. Like an English gentleman, he said, time is tight. I have to bring you away immediately. Little Tiger Bo instantly sobered up. Now? Now. The old butler scanned the surroundings. Young lord, go and bring 1 or 2 sets of your clothes. I don't need too many. The castle has everything. I need to go underground to clean up some things. Little Tiger Bo saw that Grandfather Butler had gone downstairs. The other things in the room hadn't changed. The clothes on the ground had been burned by Grandfather Butler using a special method. Little Tiger Bo didn't take many things. She had to carry the small keyboard in her arms. The other thing was the set that had been placed in the bedroom. That was taken by Grandfather and for her and Momo. Momo's face hadn't entered the picture. Only a pair of hands could be seen. But little Tiger Bo still treated it as a treasure. She carried it in her arms and glanced towards the family's house. She wanted to wait until daybreak before leaving. That way, she would be able to tell Momo where she had gone. The old butler saw through his young lord's thoughts. He softened his voice. Young lord, it isn't suitable for anyone to know where we are going this time. After we settle down, Master will help you contact the family. Little Tiger Bo wagged her tail. She thought for a moment and raised her head. Grandfather Butler, do you have a pen and paper? The old butler would inevitably be soft-hearted towards his young lord. He knew what she wanted to do and didn't stop her. He watched as his young lord laid there and wrote inexpertly. The letter was written in both Chinese and English. The writing wasn't very good. Those who didn't know her wouldn't understand what she was trying to express. After all, little Tiger Bo didn't know how to write Chinese. She used drawing to replace it. The old butler only saw one sentence. I won't be mischievous in the future. Momo, don't be angry. I have to work hard to earn money now. In the future, I will be able to buy you. The letter that was written was placed into the mailbox along with a thumb drive. In the foggy morning, a little tiger stood in front of the mailbox. Her ears drooped and she glanced towards the direction of the room. Grandfather Butler, do you think my little princess will reply to my letter? Definitely. Their young lord was so cute. Who could bear not to reply to her letter? Little Tiger Beau was still a little reluctant. After she got into the car, she leaned her head against the window and kept looking back. She had thought about it countless times. If only she hadn't quarreled with her little princess that time. After the quarrel, she didn't see him again the next day. She didn't even have a chance to apologize. That was probably the most regretful thing. She wanted to hug that person again. Even after they reached the ancient castle, she had dreamed of him carrying her on a chair and brushing her teeth for her. He was afraid that she would have a toothache, so he controlled the amount of sweets she ate. When she lost her teeth, he would snap his fingers at the toothless little tiger when he smiled. He didn't think that she was ugly either. He even gave her something to grind her teeth with. All of this seemed to vanish into thin air after daybreak. Because it was also 9 o'clock in the morning that day. Little Tiger Beau saw Mr. Beau, who had returned to the ancient castle. However, there was only her father. She didn't see her mother. Her father, who said that he wanted to bring her mother back, was alone. At that time, little Tiger Beau was still in a daze. She thought that her mother was busy as usual and didn't come back with her father. Mr. Beau's hands were dripping with blood. His long legs were supporting the motorcycle. His black trench coat was fluttering in the wind. When he took off his helmet, he gave off an indescribable feeling of darkness and fatigue. The old butler's worry was obvious. When he looked at Mr. Beau again, the light in his eyes was different from usual. Little Tiger Beau hugged her little keyboard and called out, "Dad." Mr. Beau seemed to have regained a trace of rationality. His face was stained with blood. His slender figure knelt on one knee and placed his head on little Tiger Beau's shoulder. His voice was a little hoarse. "Lord Joe, I'm sorry. This time, I'm afraid I have to go against my words." What did he mean by going against his words? Little Tiger Beau didn't understand why she was crying. It was probably because she felt her father trembling slightly. It was so unfamiliar. Little Tiger Beau didn't ask where her mother went. She didn't dare to ask. She was a little afraid. No, it wasn't a little. She was too afraid. She hugged the little keyboard in her arms and allowed her father to lead her to a place. She saw many people. She also saw her father's cold smile. Send them to where they should go. It was a kind of hatred. A hatred that couldn't be erased. It was also at that time that little Tiger Beau understood a principle. At the same time, she hated this kind of person the most. Don't always stand on the moral high ground and ask people to forgive you. If you weren't the person in question and didn't understand what the person in question had gone through, then shut up. When did the person who broke a bad person's family and stole other people's things become reasonable? She would never forgive the person who took her things. Some people harmed others to pretend to be pitiful or to criticize others. Did you think they would feel that they were in the wrong? No. They were just afraid that their image would be damaged. Or, they would show a smug expression and talk about what they had done. The heavenly axiom should be a cycle of retribution. The heavenly axiom wouldn't carry out this retribution on her behalf. Chapter 1449. At that time, Chin Mo, who was sitting at the dining table, didn't know what his little tiger was going through. But when he looked up at the clock on the wall for the third time, he didn't touch the pork and century egg porridge in front of him. The young golden-haired butler was anxious. After all, Chairman had asked him to take good care of his young master these 2 days. Besides the chef, he was the only one here. How could his young master not eat? The golden-haired butler probably knew why his young master didn't have a good appetite. He suggested in English, "Why don't we go to Miss Jo's house? After all, Mr. Beau doesn't have the habit of cooking breakfast." Chin Mo tilted his head and glanced at the golden-haired butler, his voice faint. "Do those things have anything to do with me?" The golden-haired butler choked and didn't know what to say. He thought this was the end of this matter. After a while, Chin Mo stood up. On the other side, Chin Mo stood up, seeming a little indifferent. Bring the snacks I brought from China and today's century egg and lean meat congee over. The young butler wanted to say, didn't you say that those things had nothing to do with you? In the end, you still asked me to send the food. Chin Mo thought about it. No matter how naughty the little tiger was, he couldn't let her starve. That was how raising a child was. He sent the butler to send the food while he sat in the living room. He took a book but couldn't read it. When the butler came back, Chin Mo looked up. What did she say? The young golden-haired butler exclaimed and placed the things in his hands in front of him. Chin Mo's gaze landed on it. It was the things he had given him previously, untouched. His brows slowly furrowed. The butler watched as his young master's handsome face turned colder and colder. He hurriedly said, it's not that Miss Gio didn't accept it, there's no one in the Bo family. No one? So early? Chin Mo replied, got it. His gaze landed on those things again. Even the boxed pastries had a shelf life. He had specially found a chef to make the pastries. Plus the time it took to fly over. Chin Mo lowered his gaze. There were 2 more days. Forget it, he would send it over at night. Even so. On this day, Chin Mo didn't do anything. He looked like he was reading a book. An entire day had passed but he didn't even flip that page. Not to mention eating. The blonde butler looked at the unmoving steak on the table anxiously. However, there was still no one from the Yin clan. It was finally dusk. Only then did their young master seem to have a soul. He stood up from the sofa and wrapped those things up again. Go and deliver it again. Yes, the golden-haired butler answered readily. In less than 2 minutes, he was back. Chin Mo looked at the things in his hands, his eyes dimming. Still no one. Mr. Bo came back a little late today. He must have taken Miss Gio out to play. I'll send him back at 10 p.m. The young butler was still too naive. Chin Mo nodded and sat in front of the dining table. Just as he was about to pick up the napkin, he suddenly remembered something and put it down. He hadn't seen the little tiger for 24 hours. If she followed Uncle Bo, what would he bring her to eat? As long as it wasn't junk food, it was fine. After eating it the last time, her stomach had been bulging. He had to rub it for a long time before she stopped feeling uncomfortable and knew to sleep well. In that instant, Chin Mo thought of many things. Maybe a little later. Chapter 1450. The clock in the living room swung from 6 to 10. The fog outside was so thick that he couldn't see the figure walking towards him. Night had already filled the sky. This was the 3rd time the young butler shook his head at Chin Mo. There's still no one. Chin Mo didn't speak. But the butler could see that his young master's disappointment was too obvious this time. If Chin Mo couldn't sleep yesterday, he couldn't sleep. But today, the feeling was even deeper. At 2 in the morning, he didn't tell anyone. He got up, put on his long black down jacket and walked in the direction of the Bo family's house. His back was small but it was tall and straight. He pressed the doorbell but there was still no one. Did she not come back today? Chin Mo thought. He reached out and started to climb the wall again. He had learned all her bad habits. Chin Mo stood on the balcony and looked into the house through the floor-to-ceiling window. It didn't look like anyone was there. He reached out and pushed but it didn't open. There was one thing he couldn't compare to a certain little tiger. No matter what kind of lock it was, it could be opened with her hands. He didn't get anything. Chin Mo could only go back the way he came. He hadn't seen that person for 32 hours. Even if he wasn't willing to admit it. He flew all the way from the country just so that he could see a certain little tiger earlier. Chin Mo lowered his eyes, telling himself to wait a little longer. He was the one raising the child. She wasn't the one raising him. When she came back tomorrow, he would come to the Bo family's house to make up with her. After all, according to a certain person's level of stupidity, she might not understand why he was angry. This was Chin Mo's thought that night. The next day, early in the morning, he asked someone to make a basket of soup dumplings and prepared to bring the things over. Seeing his young master like this, the young butler couldn't bear to say that there was no one at the Bow family's house. He watched as the smile on that handsome little face gradually disappeared. His young master stood in front of the Bow family's house, carrying things in his hands. The way he pressed the corners of his mouth made people think of the word lonely. Fortunately, his young master didn't stand there for long. Instead, he turned around and walked in another direction. The young butler was shocked by this sudden change and hurriedly followed. "Young master, where are you going?" His young master's route was very clear every day. One was to her house and the other was to the Bow family. Usually, he would take Miss Jo for a walk after dinner. He had never been to any other place. What was going on this time? Chin Mo didn't speak. He was wearing a black coat, giving off the vibe of a little prince. The butler looked at the little, cold figure and did not dare to ask a second time. Wait a minute. Wasn't this young Master William's house? Just as this thought rose in the butler's mind, Chin Mo had already reached out to press the doorbell. This morning, the big William was still hugging the Spider-Man pillow and fantasizing that he was saving the world. In short, he slept like a log. After all, it was still early, and the alarm clock had not yet rung. What he didn't expect was that he would be dragged out of bed. Who was it? Who was so uncultured as to disturb his dreams? After William opened his eyes, he wanted to express his dissatisfaction in an imposing manner. But when he saw a certain handsome and exquisite little face in front of him, he immediately withered. Chapter 1451. William swallowed and tried hard to maintain his dignity. Why did you come to my house? Chin Mo glanced at him and then threw him aside. Little William didn't understand why the other party wasn't speaking. His grandfather walked in and smiled at the two of them. William has never woken up early. Chin, you are indeed amazing. Little William watched as the little vixen nodded politely. He was extremely humble. Where was the force he had used to drag him down by the collar just now? This little vixen from the east only knew how to act. Little William was so angry that he didn't know what to say. He could only grab his hair and stand up. Once his grandfather left, the little vixen revealed his true colors. Not only was his voice low, but his little face was also cold as though someone owed him money. Where is Joe? Why are you asking me this question? Little William felt wronged. Ever since you came, Joe stopped playing with me. Although she didn't play with me much in the past, don't you know the methods you used? Chin Mo looked at him and said faintly, stopping Joe from playing with you is considered a method? Little William. Don't you find it shameless to say it so openly? I'll ask you again, where is Joe? Chin Mo repeated. The murderous aura made the big William grab his red hair. Boss Chin, I really don't know. Chin Mo started to look at that face. He seemed to have thought of something. Why did Uncle Bo let Joe sleep at your house? There were many surveillance cameras outside the Bo family's house. There were also some devices that the little tiger had shown him previously. It was very safe. William grabbed his hair again. Boss Chin, can you let me wear a pair of pants first when you ask me questions? Chin Mo raised his eyebrows. William shrugged. His nose was still red. All right, I won't wear it. The question is more important. But why do you keep asking me things that even I don't know the reason for? Uncle Bo told my dad that he was busy recently and couldn't take care of Joe. He asked my dad to take care of her. It would be best if he could bring Joe to the filming set often and not always stay in the same place. But now that you mention it, I find it strange too. Uncle Bo has been busy in the past but he has never done such things. When Chin Mo heard this, his hands suddenly slid down. He had a bad feeling about this. That kind of premonition was innate. It's a little strong. There was also an indescribable emptiness. He didn't stay at William's house any longer. He knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them even if he kept asking. On the other hand, little William was confused. What's going on? Why does this little monster look so distracted? The young butler was downstairs and didn't know what was going on. However, as he watched his young master walk down, he felt as if his entire being had been sucked out, and even his little face was a little dazed. Blank? He was not sure if he had used the wrong adjective. Two people returned to settle down. Chin Mo looked at the pile of New Year goods. He is waiting. Wait for that person to come back. He wasn't home yesterday. He would be able to stay at home tonight. There was no need to think so much. The Bo family was here. He's here too. Where else could the little tiger go other than here? He had to wait patiently. Otherwise, if the little tiger couldn't find him when she came back, she would definitely droop her pair of tiger ears and not speak. Chin Mo told himself not to be too impatient and not to think too much. Everything would become better. Chapter 1452. However. No. That night. The lights in the Bo house were still dark. Chin Mo took a box of pastries that had expired and placed it aside. The young blonde butler stood beside him. He had been looking for someone, so he didn't even take the newspaper from the mailbox. The atmosphere in the in-house had never been so low. Their young master hadn't eaten for 2 days. The young blonde butler couldn't wait any longer. He called Chairmanin. When Chairmanin heard the news, he put down his work and planned to rush over. But there was a large meeting on hand that he couldn't push off. Hence, 5 days later, Chairmanin flew over. During this period, he had a video call with his grandson. He also understood that if he didn't fly over, something might really happen. Chin Mo was still the same. Nothing could be seen on the surface. Rather than saying that he couldn't see anything, it would be better to say that there was something he didn't want to admit. He had clearly sensed something, but he didn't want to admit it. Children were all like this. They hoped to grab onto a certain hope. In the past, old Masterin thought that his grandson wouldn't be like this. But when he saw his grandson in front of him, he realized. In front of the person he liked, he was no different from an ordinary child. 5 days passed. The New Year goods that Chin Mo brought back for a certain little tiger couldn't be eaten anymore. He still remembered when he was about to return to China. The little tiger had curled herself into a ball and laid in his luggage. She had opened her eyes wide and asked him if he could check her back. Why didn't he fight for it back then? When Chin Mo asked himself, his lips were a little pale. After Grandpa saw his grandson, he asked the kitchen to prepare dinner before he sighed deeply. I will try to contact your Uncle Bo. His grandfather's return gave Chin Mo some hope. He had been waiting for this day. When old Masterin called, he couldn't get through. He could only spend money to investigate, but they didn't find anything. The only result was that, unbeknownst to him, the villa next to him had transferred the account to him. When he found out about this, old Masterin roughly understood what was going on. The Bo family had left. Something big must have happened. Even old Masterin, who had a friendship with Mr. Bo, didn't have the address of the castle. Hence, he couldn't find the Bo family. How to explain it to his grandson was a problem. Old Masterin had never thought that this would be the end of the story. Ever since his grandson met Joe, he had changed a lot. Perhaps he had changed too much. So much so that when he picked up the game controller to play games instead of reading, he was stunned. Old Masterin froze for a moment. Because his grandson's back was facing him, the little figure sat on the ground and put down the game controller in his hand. His voice was still indifferent. Grandfather, I was wrong. I shouldn't be so proud. I know that she only knows how to play with her little keyboard, play games, and write programs. She doesn't know the ways of the world, but I'm still waiting for her to apologize to me. Grandpa, tell Uncle Bo that I know I was wrong. Ask him to return the little tiger. I will take good care of her this time. Even if she is naughty and wants to play with little William next door, I won't care about her. At most, I will break little William's legs. Chapter 1453. No one knew how old Masterin felt when he heard his little grandson say, "I was wrong." He knew his grandson better than anyone. It was probably related to his birth. No matter how humble his family was, his pride couldn't be changed. Not to mention that he had been very sensible since he was young. Even if he had done some black-bellied things and was thrown into the army, he had never said the words, "I was wrong." Old Masterin, who had always doted on his grandson, felt his heart ache. But there was nothing he could do. If the Bo family really disappeared, no one would be able to find them. This was the rule of the underworld. At this moment, old Masterin thought of something. Someone was spending a lot of money to buy information about hackers. Could this be related? But no matter what, even if it was related, he couldn't contact them. The family fell into a silence that they had never experienced before. In fact, it was normal. If a certain little tiger had never appeared. Perhaps this was the normal state of the family. After all, Chin Mo only liked to play chess and read books. He didn't want to play with anyone. It wasn't strange that the family was quiet. But that little tiger had appeared. Not just appeared. He even bought snacks for her in his drawer. Because that little tiger loved to climb over the wall. There was never a quiet time when she crawled around and her body would get dirty from time to time. He had to wash her hands many times a day. So at Chin Mo's place, he would even prepare 3 sets of little tiger clothes in the closet. Not to mention the small meat pads he bought for her that were afraid of her own hands. People always said, "When you see something familiar." But there was never that familiar person again. His heart would feel empty. Chin Mo didn't feel empty. He played the games she played, climbed the walls she climbed, and even did something on the 10th day, breaking the window. It turned out that sometimes what was shown in the movies was real. Only by sleeping in the place where she used to be could he close his eyes and wait for dawn. If a certain little tiger was here, she definitely wouldn't have thought that he would do such a thing. Chin Mo glanced out of the window indifferently. His fingers pressed on the pillow that a certain someone often rested on. This state lasted for half a month. Old Masterin knew that it couldn't go on like this. When he brought his grandson abroad, he hoped that he would be more cheerful. Now he was in this state. Grandpa was really worried that something would happen. But there were some things that were difficult to say. Until 20 days later. During lunch, Grandpa brought up the topic. "Mo, your mom and dad have both gone home. Your dad said he wants to bring you along before he goes to the army." Grandpa thought about it too. "If you stay in the army, there will be more people accompanying you." Old Masterin only wanted his grandson to have a change of environment. After all, he was still a child. Perhaps he had forgotten something. Not so much. Grandpa was afraid that his grandson wouldn't be able to wait for the little tiger of the Bo family and would fall first. Unexpectedly, that little person put down the knife and fork in his hand, but there was no emotion on his handsome little face. "Okay." Grandpa was stunned by that one word. He didn't expect his grandson to agree so quickly. "But grandfather, you have to promise me one thing." Chin Mo lowered his voice. "Don't sell this place. If she comes back, she won't be able to find it." Chapter 1454. Okay. Grandpa Ann's voice was hoarse when he said this word. He thought that his grandson had thought it through. Until the little figure stood outside the Bo family's courtyard and looked at the window for the entire afternoon. Grandpa then realized that it didn't seem to be the case. Chin Mo held a talisman in his hand and pulled his little panda suitcase with one hand. That abstinent little face was even more indifferent than before. After getting into the car, he said, "Grandpa, I want to go to Wutai Mountain after returning to China." Wutai Mountain? Grandpa glanced sideways. After all, his grandson had never been interested in this aspect. Buddhism? Qin Mo replied and looked down at the talisman in his hand. Wutai Mountain. Grandpa had never rejected his grandson's requests. Especially at this moment. Because when his grandson tilted his head and looked at the scenery outside the window, his head was lowered. 3 days later. Wutai Mountain. There weren't many people who came to worship. Anyone who has studied the Dharma would know. The 1st and 15th day of the first month was the day when the incense was the most popular. But today, the 7th day. The number 7 in China had an ordinary meaning. But on this day. On the long stairs. Thousands of steps. A small figure with an indifferent side profile and a thin layer of sweat on his forehead bowed as he walked. A total of 999 bows. Sweat soaked his sweater. His black hair was steaming. But it didn't seem to affect his nobility. Maybe it was because he was really too young. The young novice monks saw it and watched. There was still snow on the mountain top. The snowflakes would only turn into water when they landed on the head. The young novice monks saw the figure getting closer and closer. Some of them jogged into the temple. "Master, Master, there's someone outside, there's someone outside." The old monk who was knocking on the wooden fish put down the Buddhist book and glanced up at the young novice monk. Impatient, "When does the mountain not have people coming? Where did all the Buddhist books you read go?" "No, go out and take a look, there's a child." The young novice monk was a child himself. How could he say that others were children? The old monk shook his head and walked with the smell of sandalwood. He didn't pay much attention at first. When he saw the figure bowing with each step, he paused for a moment before chanting, "Amitabha." The cold wind blew. Between the mountain streams, snowflakes fell on the shoulders of the figure, but the little boy's face was even more eye-catching than the mountain full of snow. That scene was very much like Sangyang Gyatso's poem. He said, "That year, I kowtowed and crawled on the mountain path, not to see you, but to feel your warmth. In that life, I went around mountains, rivers, and pagodas, not to cultivate my next life, but to meet you on the way. In that instant, I ascended to become an immortal, not for longevity, but to ensure your safety and happiness." The old monk was waiting for that noble little figure to walk in front of him. Qin Mo understood etiquette. Even though there was sweat on his forehead, he still bowed and greeted, "Master." 999 steps of worship, no matter when it was, he had to fulfill this wish of his. The old monk looked down, but there was helplessness in his eyes. "Young benefactor, where are you from? What do you want?" Qin Mo pulled out a red string from his neck. There was an amulet tied to the end of the red string. "Someone asked for this for me." "Master, can you give me a piece of Buddha's words?" "Do you believe in Buddhism?" the old monk asked. Qin Mo shook his head. "I only believe in myself." The old monk asked again, "Then why did you come to ask for Buddha's words?" Chapter 1455. The old monk was stunned. He chanted Amitabha again and led Qin Mo into the hall. The scripture was flipped to the 10th volume. The monk's robe fluttered, the ink and the incense. There was only one sentence left on the paper. "I hope that the little tiger in pajamas can live a peaceful and happy life." Then, someone carefully protected a talisman and wore it at the position closest to his heart. Regardless of whether it was in the military, studying in a foreign country, or after finishing his studies, he stood at the borders and protected his country. There was someone who always wore a talisman that didn't match his identity. The day they quarreled. The two children didn't know what was going to happen. Even the little tiger thought that she would come and look for Momo after she was done with what she needed to do. Until after the darkness. Her father brought her to the tombstone. He caressed her hair and told her, Joe, the best way to protect the most important person is to make others think that she isn't that important. Otherwise, become stronger. Don't leave any traces. You should know that for a hacker who lives behind a computer, the exposure of traces and private life is fatal. It's the same for you and other hackers. From now on, you will be the young lord. I told you the rules of being a young lord a long time ago. Protect the people you need to protect. Use the keyboard in your hand to speak up for injustice. Hence, the little tiger had been enduring. She learned more things and created more powerful little games. She didn't just use it for confessions. Instead, she mixed viruses into it. She even learned how to write calligraphy, read bedtime stories, roll up her sleeves and tie her scarf. She didn't wear the little tiger pajamas anymore. She didn't need to act cute anymore. She didn't need to wag her tail and follow behind anyone. Not everyone could give her a piece of candy when she was naughty. Not everyone would be afraid of her toothache and check the small pockets on her clothes. The smell of being drowned in darkness. Probably, when she slept, she could only hug her little keyboard. Bojo was still sensible. She understood the current situation. She endured for 101 days. 3 months. She couldn't bear it anymore. For the first time, she took a car alone and ran to the Inn family. Even though she knew that she wouldn't find anything, she still ran to the window. There was no one. He must have returned to China. Bojo was wearing a black t-shirt. Her aura seemed to have changed, her small figure blending into the darkness. The old butler watched from the side. He really couldn't bear to see this happen. He walked over with a black umbrella. "Young master, let's go back." The little figure lowered his head and didn't say anything. The old butler turned his head away and gradually fell silent. Later on, there was a period of time when the young lord would always tell him how good her little princess was to her. She would stop from time to time. The old butler still remembered that master had carried the young lord up and placed her on his neck, letting her grab his hair while she was asleep. Dressed in a black windbreaker, it looked like he was smiling, but there were more things on his face. "Alan, there are some things that are more painful to remember clearly. Joe is still too young." It was a casual remark. However, the old butler understood what his master meant. It was slightly hypnotic. It would always make people hide some of their memories. Wait until you see that person. Those memories would come back bit by bit. When Mr. Bo bent down, he planted a kiss on the little tiger's forehead. "Joe, you must understand who you are. Understand who you are. Everything will come back. Have you ever thought of raising a person?" Bojo did. She wanted to raise little Princess Chin. Chapter 1456. It was probably because he liked it too much. Even General Chin could vaguely guess his son's thoughts. It wasn't Old Master N who said it. It was because Chin Mo had a high fever after coming down from Mount Wutai. Before he had followed him to the military, he had tugged on his sleeves, asking him to show mercy to those who were good at using the keyboard. In reality, those who knew Chin Mo would know that he had taken on many cases and he was more interested in hacking. Back then, Chin Mo was still wearing his number 1 middle school uniform. He was a handsome young man with delicate features and an elegant demeanor. No one could link this unbelievably handsome high school student with the Almighty who had solved many cases. Many people said that they didn't know what the Almighty was thinking. His emotions were so calm that they couldn't tell if he was happy or angry, yet he was elegant and noble. He could easily portray the mind of a criminal. He didn't seem like a high school student at all. He was cold like an iceberg that wouldn't melt in 1,000 years. No one had ever seen him smile. But they had seen him feeding stray cats by the roadside. They also knew that he had a house cat called Princess. No one could figure it out. Why would a male cat be called Princess? Without a doubt, Chin Mo was a genius. He was often praised in this way as well. I never expected an ice cube like you to come from the Qin family. This was what Director Huang had said when he had first met Qin Mo, laughing heartily. At that time, Qin Mo had been looking down at the corpse beneath his feet. After hearing his words, his gloved hands touched the bloodstains on the ground, lifting his lids slightly. Director Huang's stomach hadn't been as round back then, like a balloon at most. When he saw Ice Cube Qin glance at him, he thought he was going to say something. After all, he was a senior and a bureau chief. "Excuse me, please." The voice was very light. It was indeed a little emotional when it was said by a person wearing a high school uniform. But wait a minute, this wasn't the right attitude to speak to the bureau chief. This little Qin, he had to be taught a lesson. Director Huang was about to use his authority. Qin Mo added casually, "Your tummy is too big, it's affecting my ability to see the clues." Director Huang. Kids nowadays, if they were a little smarter, they could fly. Uncle Huang, you should understand that the case is more important. Qin Mo seemed to have guessed his thoughts. He slowly took off his gloves. When he did that, for some reason, he looked like a deacon in a manga. He was so handsome that the students weren't even afraid of a dead person. Director Huang coughed, but before he could speak, the voice rang out again, this time with a hint of coldness. "It's not a suicide, it's a homicide. The traces of blood don't look right. If it was a suicide, it wouldn't be left here. Also, the killer took another person with him." Director Huang knew it wasn't suicide. After all, he was experienced and could tell. But what did the criminal mean by taking another person away? Phone. Qin Mo glanced sideways, his gaze landing on the bushes at the side. "There's a phone that doesn't belong to the murderer or the victim." Director Huang was in disbelief. "How do you know it isn't the murderer?" "Uncle Huang, this is a serial killer. How stupid would the murderer be to leave his phone at the scene?" Qin Mo asked casually. Director Huang choked from the poison. This Ice Cube Jr. wasn't cute at all. "Since you're so good at solving cases, I'll put up with you." Chapter 1457. Right at this moment, Director Huang watched as Qin Mo took another step forward, suddenly saying, "The culprit is at the scene." At the scene? Director Huang's first reaction was to deny it. How is that possible? Nothing is impossible. Only by appearing here would he be able to clear his suspicion. Under what circumstances would he be able to kidnap a person after killing one? It's obvious that an acquaintance committed the crime. The murderer is smart enough to know that the police would guess this. That's why he deliberately appeared at the scene to show that he has nothing to do with this case and create an alibi. After all, if the murderer is here, no one would suspect that he kidnapped the person. Qin Mo glanced over, his eyes filled with indifference. Nothing is impossible. Only by appearing here would he be able to wash away suspicion. His voice wasn't loud or soft. When it came slowly, Director Huang's expression changed. Director Huang's expression changed instantly as he turned to speak into the earpiece. "Seal off the area, make all the students stay here." "Roger." Even though he wasn't sure why Director Huang had given such an order, the crime squad had always been on the move. But, there were too many people around. Which one was the culprit? Just as Director Huang was thinking about it, the person in the high school uniform walked towards the crowd, giving him a hand signal. It was obvious he was telling him not to come over. He was obviously younger than the group of university students, but because of his elegance, his aura was much higher. The onlookers didn't know that the person who solved the case was a high school student. Hence, when Qin Mo walked towards them, some of the female university students blushed, whispering amongst themselves. They had never seen such a boy before. Qin Mo's gaze locked onto one person, looking at his gloomy gaze. He pressed the Bluetooth earpiece beside him. "I found the culprit." Director Huang sprinted over the moment he received the news. His first reaction was to look for a well-built male student. But after searching for half a day, there were only females, no males. Where is the culprit? Director Huang lowered his voice. Qin Mo glanced up when he saw that the person was about to leave. In front of me. Director Huang stilled, unable to believe it. After all, the other party wasn't just a girl, she was dressed rather adorably and wasn't tall. How could such a person be the culprit? After all, this was a serial murder case. You're not going to attack? Qin Mo arched a brow. He turned and kicked the branch with his long leg. I'm going to attack. The girl, who wanted to pretend that nothing had happened and walk away, only felt a whooshing sound. Her back was hit hard by something. Then, she was pressed to the ground by the police. She seemed to have realized something. After a pause, she shouted loudly, "What are you doing? What's so great about the police? What right do they have to arrest me? Shut up." The crime squad didn't want to spread the news. The girl became even more restless. I'm going to sue you. Before I sue you, you will be sentenced to death. An indifferent voice came along with the long legs. It was the high school student. The girl paused again. From the start, the way you looked at the scene was different from others. When I walked over, you didn't even look at me. A normal girl wouldn't be in the mood to look at the scene after seeing me. Director Huang. Was this a honey trap? Chapter 1458. After listening to Qin Mo, the girl's face turned pale but she still scoffed. What evidence do you have to prove that I'm the murderer? That's hilarious, I've been here the whole time. Isn't the evidence in your hands? Qin Mo lowered his lids, his gaze faint. The technology is very advanced, it can detect the blood stains on your hands, even if it's just a tiny bit. The girl started to struggle violently. She seemed to be indignant, she had done it so discreetly, no one should know. Director Huang was an experienced policeman, and with one look at her expression, he could tell that she was up to no good. He got the plain clothes to bring her away. He turned to ask Qin Mo, still curious. How did you know she was a girl? To be able to use a scheme to kill, it means that the murderer can easily lower one's guard. Obviously, a girl is more likely to be the murderer. Qin Mo replied nonchalantly, glancing over to take the coffee he had gotten someone to prepare, behaving like a young master. Director Huang felt stifled. I understand, there are so many freshmen in the police academy, why don't you start a topic for them? Uncle Huang. Qin Mo took a sip of the coffee. I'm expensive, unless you have a case I'm interested in. Director Huang laughed. Of course I do. Listen up, help me mentor new students for half a month and I'll assign you the international case I want you to do. Otherwise, I'll get someone else to do it. Qin Mo's gaze wavered. 3 days. You're using 3 days instead of half a month. Director Huang was on the verge of cursing. Qin Mo lifted his eyelids, still holding on to the coffee. 1 day. Director Huang gritted his teeth. 3 days it is. Qin Mo threw the empty coffee cup into the bin, his voice calm. It's a pleasure working with you, but Uncle Huang, I will report you to the station for abusing your power and threatening your subordinates. Director Huang, he really wanted to hit him. He was famous at a young age. It was undoubtedly an eyesore. Even when he was explaining the case, many people weren't convinced. After all, he was just a high school student. But as he analyzed the case, his godlike predictions and psychological tests were written. It made people understand a principle. Geniuses had the right to be arrogant. 3 days. Qin Mo analyzed the case for 3 days. On the 4th day, he was already on a plane to Fifth Avenue in his high school uniform. It couldn't be helped. After all, there were still more than 20 days before the college entrance examination. In some ways, he was still a student. But even so, his appearance still attracted the attention of many people, and the air stewardesses walked up to him more than once. After all, there were not many people who wore school uniforms and sat in first class. The reason why he was in such a hurry was because of the files he had seen at Director Huang's place. The people at Fifth Avenue seemed to have investigated his information and knew about the cases he had handled in the country. They also knew which university he had graduated from and what kind of cases he was interested in. Therefore, the files were very accurate. International criminal. Z. Gender, unknown. Blood, unknown. Age, unknown. Nationality, unknown. The only thing that was written was the enemy's area of expertise, using the internet to launch large-scale attacks, but never leaving a trace. There was also a comment attached below. Qin Mo nodded and gestured for him to look to his left. A blue-haired girl was wearing a motorcycle helmet. Her voice was calm. A cool motorcycle. The blonde man. Chapter 1460. Just as the golden-haired man was clenching his fists and lowering his head in frustration, the monotonous voice rang in his ears again. What other information do you have? Since you've interacted with him many times, you should be able to gather some information. If you really don't have any, you can tell me the process. The process of the case. The golden-haired man immediately said. Because it's too unbelievable every time, we kept a lot of live videos. After all, Z would make a notice every time he wanted to arrest someone. That's the biggest headache. But this method is not bad. If the influence is big, those rich and powerful people won't use other methods to influence the final verdict. Some people are especially good at using the loopholes of the internet. Qin Mo followed his guidance and opened the car door. When he heard what he said, he raised his eyebrows. His gaze was very calm. You seem to admire Z, that's hard to say. Anyway, we have to arrest him. The golden-haired man wanted to pretend to be profound. Qin Mo didn't continue his sentence. Instead, he said calmly, let's take a look at the live video first. It was probably because this person's noble aura was too strong. The golden-haired man always felt that this person wasn't easy to approach. He was just a high school student. Why did he look so cold? However, when he thought about his identity, the golden-haired man's thoughts changed again. Those piles of cases couldn't be solved by an incompetent person. Moreover, from the information they received, no matter how suspicious or old a case was, he would be able to uncover the culprit in a very short time. He was one step faster than the criminal and could predict the criminal's whereabouts. It seemed like only such a person wouldn't be bewitched by Z. The more the golden-haired man thought about it, the more he felt that their chances of success this time were very high. After all, this was someone they hired secretly. They didn't go through the internet process and they didn't spread the news. Z probably didn't even know that he was the one who came to pick him up. Time passed by a little more. It was almost dusk. The sky on Fifth Avenue was always so blue. White doves and square fountains could be seen everywhere. The wide and spacious road was very suitable for racing. Hence, many of the blockbusters that we saw in the cinemas were filmed here. However, people who weren't locals wouldn't know. There was also a culture here called the street culture. There was also a zone here called the gray zone. There were a lot of gangsters gathered there. There were people from all walks of life. Dusk approached and night fell. When the lights were first turned on, the telephone booths by the roadside looked very ordinary. The black dude who was doodling was still thinking about how to occupy the other wall as well. The original phone booth suddenly moved to the left and right as if someone had pressed an unknown button. There was a crashing sound. One of the doors rolled up. Then, a black Lamborghini sports car with bat-shaped wings rushed out from the inside, like the world's most elegant lion, indicating this point. It was about to move. When the car came out, the black buddies all froze and immediately jumped to the side. One must know that the owner of the car was not someone to be trifled with. However, the owner of the carriage had always been mischievous. The more afraid others were, the more they were. The more he deserved her greeting. Chapter 1461. Along with that voice. The car window rolled down automatically. The black people couldn't leave even if they wanted to. After all, the only way out was blocked by the other party. They could only turn their heads and look towards the Lamborghini. The dark black car window rolled down. A youngster with black hair died with a few strands of silver stretched out her arm. There was a black ring on her slender fingers. Her lips were half curved and she looked very handsome and evil. The most eye-catching thing was the tear mole at the corner of her eye. Everyone else's were black. But hers was black with a tinge of red. For no reason, there was a hint of Buddha's beauty. This was Bojio's real 18 years old. She was clearly a girl, but it was a complete mess of androgynous. This didn't seem to have much to do with her hairstyle. It was the aura that this person exuded. In fact, the black people were very famous in this area. Many of the circulation on the streets were completed by them. In this old city, all the people you could imagine gathered here. Thieves, liars, swindlers. Every one of them was difficult to deal with. After all, these things required skills. The black people loved to group together and had excellent voices. This was related to their bloodline. Don't think that all of them were good or bad. This was related to history. Musical talent and fighting talent were on par. The first three people living here, thieves, liars, and swindlers, would usually take a detour when they saw a black person. But the person who made the black people take a detour was the person in front of her. The weather is really good. Bojio raised her head casually and looked at the night sky that had already darkened. If anyone saw this scene, they would definitely think that it was a classic. Fifth Avenue. Night had just fallen. The elegant youngster lifted his thin lips slightly. It was as if he could see the wind moving. This was Z's 18 years old. She did things her own way, unrestrained and extremely mysterious. It was probably because there was no one to control her or spoil her anymore. Hence, even her eyes didn't have the light from when she was young. Instead, they were dark and heavy. Even though she was smiling, it was easy to think of the devil in the comics. The black people couldn't leave. They were all blocked by her in the corner. Although it was a friendly gesture, how could she tell that the weather was good when the sky was dark? However, this was a daily occurrence. The black people knew that to deal with someone, they had to maintain a straight face. As expected. Bojio wasn't interested anymore. She turned the steering wheel beautifully and headed towards the bustling streets. Only then did the African Americans let out a sigh of relief. Seriously, ever since this guy moved in, they couldn't act like big shots anymore. The route has been modified. Master, where are we going today? Ripples appeared in the system one after another. It was the intelligent little black. However, at this time, it was influenced by its master. His voice was still deep and evil, and it didn't sound like a decent person. Bojio twirled her hair with one hand. It's still early, the nightlife has just started. I'm just taking a stroll. Okay. The smart little black automatically turned on the music and sped up. Soon, it left the car in front of it behind. Bojio glanced over, a faint smile on her face. Bring me the information of today's prey. Yes, my handsome master. Swoosh. The 3D screen changed from a road map to a picture. Chapter 1462. A local who used his power to force his subordinates to have sex with him. After receiving the report, the police quickly filed the case. However, the plaintiff did not appear in court. According to analysis, the plaintiff's lawyer used some tricks. He understood that reputation was very important to Asians, so after talking to the plaintiff, things changed. Smith was acquitted at 3:00 this afternoon, while little Blackie was talking about this. The screen also showed the scene of Smith walking out of the building. A reporter was interviewing him. What do you think about this incident? Smith was a tall man. He was probably finally released from the court. His "I don't know anything" and aggrieved expression changed. He smiled. What do I think? I've been released. That's my biggest opinion on this matter. Some Asians are shy. I was just expressing my admiration, but she misunderstood. Now, she should know that in the words of the Asians, it should be mutual affection. It wasn't forced. Besides, she didn't say anything at the start. After half a month, she couldn't take it anymore. The judge wouldn't listen. There were police officers in charge of the case. They stood there, anger hidden in their eyes. The plaintiff didn't appear in court. They could understand why. It was precisely because he understood why that he punched the wall heavily. The golden-haired man was infuriated. Through the crowd, he looked over here. He had originally wanted to send the Almighty to the police station, but now, his sleeves were rolled up. He looked as though he wanted to beat Smith to death. Smith didn't mind. If he cared about others' criticism, he wouldn't have done such a thing. The situation was clear. Everyone knew what had happened. The natural disadvantage of women made some things hard to explain. Instead, it benefited the rascal. But when the rascal was released, he didn't feel that he was in the wrong. When he faced the camera, he said, "I have some advice for Asians, especially girls. If you can't afford to play, don't play." When Bo Jio heard this, her lips curved upwards. With a swoosh, she gripped the steering wheel tightly and increased the speed to the maximum. And at the scene at that time, the golden-haired man was so angry that his breathing was hurried. On the other hand, Chin Mo, who was sitting beside him, turned his head. Through the window, his gaze landed on Smith, who was still being interviewed. Listening to the English words drifting into his ears, his slender fingers rhythmically tapped on the car window. That was something he would only do when he was thinking. Her eyes were as cold and indifferent as ever. The blonde man turned his head and wanted to find someone to complain with him. "You say, how could such a rascal be released? The plaintiff withdraws the lawsuit. The evidence is insufficient." His tone was very calm, and it sounded a little careless. The blonde man really felt that this detective was a little too cold. "I say, Chin, oh no, I mean Almighty, don't you have any reaction after hearing such an infuriating thing?" Chin Mo glanced over. "What do you mean?" "Emotions, what about your emotions?" After the golden-haired man finished speaking, he asked again, "Are all your experts like this?" Chapter 1463. The golden-haired man wanted to say something, but Chin Mo retracted his gaze. Chin Mo retracted his gaze, looking noble and abstinent. Where will this person go in the future? The golden-haired man was confused. Which person? The rascal you mentioned. Chin Mo's voice was still indifferent. The golden-haired man finally felt relieved. "Chin, you want to beat him up too, don't you?" "No." Chin Mo's gaze landed on his face. His aura was noble. "Beating this kind of person will dirty my hands." The golden-haired man. This was the first time he felt that words could be used in this way. This was even more satisfying than beating someone up. The golden-haired man controlled the smile on his face. Then, he asked curiously, "Chin, why are you asking him where he is going if you don't want to beat him up?" "Because." When Chin Mo said this, his fingers that were tapping on the car window stopped. "He will become Z's target today." Swoosh. A hurried braking sound rang in the air. The golden-haired man turned the car around and stopped by the side of the road. He turned his head and his blue eyes widened. "What did you say?" "I said, He will become Z's target today, Chin Mo repeated casually. His voice was neither fast nor slow. It was a stark contrast to the other person. The golden-haired man didn't know what to ask first. After thinking for a long time, he took out his phone and called the police station. Hello? It's me. Did Z send out a black notice letter today? The person flipped through the information and leaned back. He shrugged. Please, Eric. Would I not tell you if Z sent out a notice letter? I don't need to tell you. The police station will send out a message to inform everyone. When he said this, he didn't realize that there was a black piece of paper at the bottom of the information. Eric nodded. That's right. All right, contact me if there's any situation. After hanging up, he turned his head and said to Chin Mo, Chin, you must have just come to Fifth Avenue and aren't used to the style of handling cases here. Before Z deals with anyone, they will send out a black notice letter in advance. Then, they will lock onto the target at night. The police station didn't receive, the golden-haired man didn't finish his sentence. The phone in his hand rang again. A clear voice came from the other side. Z. Notice letter. Z's notice letter. Eric, how did you know that Z would send out a notice today? The golden-haired man was stunned. He wasn't the one who guessed that Z would send a notice today. Instead, Eric tilted his head and looked at the emotionless handsome face. A certain high school student, he hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Eric couldn't hide his emotions no matter how hard he tried. No wonder the higher-ups wanted him to bring her over in secret. Was it a coincidence? Was he really that awesome? Eric prepared himself and looked at Chin Mo again. Chin, how did you know that Smith would be Z's target today? Didn't you just ask me why I have no emotions? Chin Mo placed his phone down and the investigation documents beside it. All my emotions are on how to send this scumbag back to prison. Z should be the same. Before I came, I read the documents you wrote for me. Even though it was useless, it wasn't hard to see Z's style. Chapter 1464. Are you referring to Z's unbridled style? Eric felt the same way too. Did he really treat the police station as his own home? He could come and go as he pleased. Sometimes, he would even give them presents. He even gave them presents for Christmas. He had seen criminals, but he had never seen such an arrogant one. Eric would never forget it. The Christmas card that Z left for them. There was only one sentence on it. After eating the candy I gave you, you have to work hard. If not, how are you going to catch me? He was asking for a beating. He was asking for a beating. Chin Mo looked at the unwillingness surging in the eyes of the people beside him. He raised his eyebrows. I'm referring to his style. The people that Z gave to you were all people that should have been in prison, but because of loopholes, they couldn't be dealt with. That's right. The golden-haired Eric sighed. That's why he has a very high reputation among the citizens. You don't know this, but when he was just released, there was someone who publicly confessed in an interview and insisted on marrying him. She even said that he packed the criminal and the criminal's evidence and sent them to our police station. This action was especially cool. He is cool, but what about us? We handle so many cases usually. Why didn't anyone praise us? Chin Mo's indifferent gaze shifted. The golden-haired Eric also realized that he had gone off topic and wanted to change it. He heard that person say, your faces aren't handsome enough. The golden-haired Eric. Can you find a new partner for the Almighty? As for other things, for example, the Christmas gift and card you mentioned. From this, we can see that Z is a person. When Chin Mo said this, his fingers paused. The golden-haired Eric was anxious. What is Z? Chin Mo seemed to have come back to his senses at this moment. Something started to float in his eyes. His voice was still indifferent. A little mischievous. He's not just a little mischievous. In the end, He pulled his hair to express his headache. Fortunately, Z hasn't killed anyone yet. No, that's not right. Z should have killed someone before, but that was a long time ago. The other party was a teacher from a famous school. We only found out about this after investigating. However, the case isn't here. It's in an unknown small state. When we were investigating the pattern of cyber attacks, we found this case. However, the details of the case aren't clear yet. Some people said that the teacher couldn't handle the pressure at that time and lost his footing and fell from the building. When we were investigating, we did some reconstruction. It was indeed the second situation. He lost his footing and fell from the building. However, there's one thing that Z was definitely there at that time. Chin Mo listened and suddenly, his gaze froze. Are you sure this is Z's first network attack? I shouldn't say it's the first network attack. I should say it's his appearance. The golden-haired Eric combined the information he had and said, in the past, there seemed to be some small fights, but at that time, it was like, how should I put it? As a detective, I feel that this is a huge turning point for Z, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to change his style from small fights. How should I describe it? In short, it's very mysterious. At this moment, Chin Mo opened his mouth and said accurately, from not knowing what he's doing to knowing what he has to do. Yes. The golden-haired Eric snapped his fingers. That's what I mean. Chin Mo looked up. His voice was very calm. Then investigate. Chapter 1465. Chin Mo's eyes were originally light, but at this moment, they darkened. Investigate what that famous teacher has done in the past. When a person has a major change, they will start from the people around them. Find out the relationship between the famous teacher and you will be able to find Z. Eric was speechless for a while before saying, what kind of investigation method is this? Psychology, Chin Mo said slowly. When a person does something, they can't leave the environment. The murderer's mentality will be reflected at the crime scene. Z's mentality will also be reflected at the scene when she takes action. Eric truly felt that the high school student they invited was a little amazing. But it's too late to go now. Call them and ask them to help with the investigation. When Chin Mo said this, his gaze landed on the street again. Also, give me a 3D map of Fifth Avenue. Eric exclaimed. Why do you want to look at the map? To find someone. Chin Mo only gave him these two words and didn't say anything else. Eric was very busy. He had to contact this person and apply for something else. In the end, he had to drive his car and follow that rascal. After all, Z would kidnap people every time. If this high school student's deduction was correct, then Z would definitely appear near Smith. He had to admit that Eric was much smarter this time. Who said that Z wouldn't appear? Smith was a person. He was born lustful and liked to pick up girls. There was a place where he was locked up for a week. He would definitely go there. Budden Street. A famous nightclub on Fifth Avenue. Smith had always been fond of Asians. Here, it was easy to see Asian faces in the drunken lantern riddles. There were many young people. It was impossible for him not to go. Even if he wanted to wash away his bad luck, he would go for a drink and have a good time. Moreover, it was a festival today. It could be said that before night fell, the curtains to the celebration had already begun. Beside the nightclub was an opera house. It was said that Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet would be performed today. However, the nightclub was in the style of a masquerade party. Hence, everyone was dressed in a different style. It was at a stand on the far right of the nightclub. A black-haired youngster wearing a jacket was shaking a cup with his fingers. His fingertips seemed to be emitting light. Not to mention the black light that was shining from his left ear. Sitting next to the youth was a red-haired female student. Her face was filled with surprise. The young man smiled and said in English, "Guess, how many?" "I can't guess." It was just that anyone could guess it. Every time the young man rolled the dice, they were all consistent. Either all 6 dice were zeros or all 1. Looks like it's a little difficult for you. Bojo stood up, her clothes fluttering with her movements, revealing a small part of her waist. A black mark flashed across her waist, but no one would notice it in such an occasion. It was a very, very small letter, with the mark of a rose, as if it had bloomed on her snow-white skin. Z, the name was enough to cause panic. But now, it was hidden in the darkness of the night. The youngster casually took a guitar beside her. There were 2 or 3 black rings on her fingers, which often made people subconsciously obscure her gender. He was the only person who was so cool that the entire audience screamed. Everyone said that this resident singer was different from the rest. Chapter 1466. There was a loud screech. It was the roar of an electric guitar. The youngster jumped onto the stage, smiling. Even though she was wearing a black feather mask, the tear mole at the corner of her eye was extremely domineering. The moment Bojo placed her fingers on the guitar, the venue was heated up. But other than this, it was the American police who were patrolling at the entrance. They weren't sure if it was a routine inspection or something else. Bojo, who was standing on the stage, saw it, but she wasn't affected at all. Her black leather jacket and the way she held the microphone looked very handsome. The song swept over. She was singing in Chinese. The bell sounded the signal to return home. In his life, there seemed to be a hint of sadness. The meaning of his black skin was a lifetime of dedication. In the struggle of his skin color, time turned possession into loss. His tired eyes were filled with hope, the rock version of glorious years. Music had no boundaries. As long as the atmosphere was stirred up, the people below the stage would naturally wave their hands along. This greatly hindered the police's actions. But they had no choice. After all, they didn't have any evidence. The only thing they could confirm was that Smith had arrived 15 minutes ago. He had even hit on someone and was swaying in the crowd. According to the highest order of the police station, Z would appear here. But there were so many people. Where would Z be? Every police officer who was on duty had a solemn expression. After all, they really wanted to catch that person. Now that they finally had a chance, how could they let it go? However, with such thoughts in their minds, no one looked at the youngster in the dark, holding the microphone. The pair of black eyes were still flashing with light, like a cat playing with a mouse. This was the start of the game. Eric came in at this moment. Behind him was Chin Mo. Chin Mo was still wearing the school uniform he had worn in China. When the people in the nightclub saw him, a hint of surprise flashed across their eyes. But when they remembered that they were in a masquerade dance venue, they more or less accepted it. After all, even though this Asian man was wearing sportswear, his noble aura made the surroundings cold. As for why the foreigners thought that Almighty Chin was wearing sportswear, they could imagine the school uniforms in China. Eric felt that Chin Mo's style wasn't suitable for such a chaotic place. He would definitely have a headache soon. Should he tell the Almighty that there was a difference between the Fifth Avenue and China when it came to playing around? Isn't the music too loud? Eric roared out. Chin Mo had one hand in his pocket. His side profile was calm, so handsome that many people started to turn their heads. However, it was as if he had walked into a classroom. Where's Smith? This was what Chin Mo had instructed Eric in advance. Tell him to keep an eye on Smith. After all, it was a masquerade party. It would be difficult to find Harding when he put on other clothes. Z might take advantage of the chaos to get him away. He didn't really care about Smith. He wanted to know. Z, who was it? That's right, this was the reason why Chin Mo decided to come to Fifth Avenue after reading the information. The army also sent him a message, asking him to return in a few days. Before the past. He just wouldn't give up until he came to Fifth Avenue. After all, the other party was a hacker, right? Chapter 1467. Eric looked at the Almighty's face and felt that he was thinking too much. No matter how loud the music was, the Almighty was still the Almighty. The Almighty was indeed the Almighty. His expression hadn't changed since he entered. At that time, Eric didn't know. There was a type of deduction genius in this world. When they were immersed in their own deductions, it was as though they had entered another world. From a psychological point of view, there were two situations that were the best for thinking. Either it was extremely quiet, or it was extremely noisy. In such an environment, it was better for the brain to function. Of course, the prerequisite for these situations was that one had to be an expert. In actual fact, the moment Chin Mo entered, he was immersed in his own thoughts. In front of everyone. People said that the highest state of solving a case was to imagine yourself as the criminal. If he was Z, what would he do? There was no doubt that the atmosphere here was good. The more people there were, the more they could do something amidst the chaos. It was best to strike when people didn't expect it. But there were cameras here. They had set up spies in advance. How would Z escape? Of course, Z was a hacker. He would definitely intercept the contents of the police's operation. What if the operation was fake? That was right. Chin Mo wouldn't come unprepared. He had already made a distraction. Setting up an operation was one thing. But the ultimate goal was something else. It was a simple logic. If the search was strict, Z would definitely appear in the opposite place. If he couldn't interrupt Z's operation, he would go and intercept her. Give me Smith's location. Chin Mo's handsome face turned slightly when he thought about this. His entire body was abstinent. Eric looked through the crowd and pointed at the Caucasian whose face was flushed red. This kind of scum should be beaten up. MMH, Chin Mo replied faintly. Then he closed his eyes and automatically eliminated all the sounds around him. He was prepared to enter the reasoning space again. But when he did that, he realized that when the music, noises, and whistles disappeared, there was only one sound that couldn't be eliminated. A song. Chin Mo opened his eyes. There was light in his eyes. Suddenly, he looked towards the highest stage and frowned. A Chinese song? It's nice, isn't it? This singer is really not bad. He's the first person who dared to sing a Chinese song here, Eric said and automatically hummed a few lines. Chin Mo's voice was low. The glorious years are affecting my thoughts. Affect my thoughts? Eric didn't really understand the world of experts. Chin Mo's gaze dimmed. Chinese is my mother tongue and I often listen to this song. The more familiar something was, the harder it was to eliminate it. Ari still didn't understand. Chin Mo had to find another way. Can I go to the backstage of the nightclub? Yes. Eric showed the things. I specially applied for a search warrant. Chin Mo took another look at the person on the stage. Because of the mask, he couldn't see her face clearly. The only thing that left a deep impression on him was the pair of eyes that were as dark as the night, as well as the glowing mole under her eyes. The more unique something was, the easier it would leave a deep impression. This had a huge impact on Chin Mo. He had to get rid of some things before he could conduct a detailed analysis. But there was a disturbance. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.